All right. Good evening. Welcome to episode 90. Welcome, David.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming in short notice. It was just like a quick booking, and then it was like, boom, we were rolling quick.
I think it was on the radar since last year. I think it was Tim Dubansky, and then came for air, so I was ready.
I think he thought I forgot that he talked to me about you guys, but I appreciate you coming in. So we'll start off with how we start off every podcast now here with an intro. So tonight I'm honored to sit down with Lieutenant Colonel retired David McDowell, a 21-year Army veteran, West Point graduate, combat leader, and corporate executive. David was born and raised just outside of Washington, D.C., where early exposure to service and sacrifice shaped his sense of responsibility and leadership. After graduating from the United States Military Academy in 1996, he was commissioned as a field artillery officer and went on to serve across Europe, the Middle East, and Central Asia. His career included leadership roles in Bosnia, Kosovo, Iraq, Afghanistan, and Kuwait, earning him multiple awards, including 2 Bronze Stars and the Defense Meritorious Service Medal. He commanded at multiple levels and later transitioned into strategic acquisition and contracting leadership across the Army. After retiring in 2017, David successfully transitioned into the corporate world, leading high-impact operations at JPMorgan Chase. He also co-authored a book, which we'll talk about, Be a Better Leader, and is preparing to release his next book, focused on trust as the cornerstone of leadership. Tonight, we'll talk about resilience, the impact of deployment on the family, military to civilian transition, corporate leadership, and how to become a producer of leadership rather than just a consumer. So please join me and welcome David McDowell to episode 90 of Pours with Patriots.
Yeah.
I always love the bio. I'm always like, whoo, everyone's...
Well, listen, when you gave me the thing, I was like, I had to pull a DD-214, and I had this little, I love me, notebook with all my OERs and the whole thing. And I was like, man, I had to recreate this whole thing. So it was a good exercise. I appreciate it.
No, yeah. Well, hopefully we don't talk about all those things, but we'll get into it as we go along. So before we get started, we'll start with a quote here. This is from Mark Esper. I grew up a long time. We could talk about that at the West Point era. So West Point's kind of like home to me. So this is a quote about West Point. This is: at the age of 18, I went to West Point and I swore an oath to defend this Constitution. And I embraced a motto called duty and honor and country. And I've lived my life in accordance with those values ever since then.
Cool.
So it's as much as I like to make jokes about West Pointers, because not everybody could have made it in Norwich, especially in the 90s though.
Yes.
We were there, so
yes.
But welcome.
To look those stats up on Norwich.
So we talked a little bit in the opening about growing up. You grew up outside of DC. From your bio you sent me, you were a pretty active kid, involved in a lot of stuff. What was it like being a young David growing up in Silver Spring, Maryland?
Yeah, I mean, I guess to do the origin story, right? But so I was actually adopted. So I was 1 month after being born, I was adopted to a loving family, Jane and Jeans McDowell. And, growing up in Silver Spring, Maryland, I think my father kind of pushed me or saw the potential. And so he made sure that I was in the right positions and going to the right schools and getting the right opportunities. And so, being in DC, I think, especially, in the early 80s, growing up and coming of age, that was also an opportunity for me to, what I do is I'd take my bicycle in Silver Spring, go all the way down to Rock Creek Park, and I'd go to Library of Congress, when you had to crack a book to write a report. And so I was always around those symbols of freedom and those type of, elements that we, value in what we are as America. So for me early on, that idea of, and also you got to think about, the other thing I was dealing with is, being adopted and trying to understand, kind of dealing with that as a person and,
Yeah. So when did you find out you were adopted?
I think my mother told me when I was or my parents told me when I was 11 or 12. I'm trying to think, probably going to correct me if I'm wrong on that one. And, for me, the takeaway was I'm happy or I'm fortunate that I'm at least in this position. Mm-hmm. Right. And that, my mother, whoever she is, and by the way, I think my parents told me maybe a few years ago, who she was. And I think she was a young mother back, she was young and probably too young to have a child. And so that was the most I kind of got out of it. And I never looked into doing the try to find your family. Not saying that I won't, but I was well, I'm happy with what I've got and I'm kind of in a good situation. So I think, that has also led to feelings of, not feelings, but feeling, I won't say alone, but hey, you're navigating this with, it's family, but it's not family. So that's one thing I'm still also.
Yeah, I've talked to several people that's happened. So I'm interested in that conversation. So the family, they tell you that age, were you curious? I know you live you're in a good place. Was there a part of you that was still curious to try to find out who, mom and dad were, or were you just kind of I'm okay here. And were your adopted parents, were they open to that, or?
Yeah. I think they were, and that's something I think nowadays is probably easier to get to that versus kind of the search you'd probably do back in the 80s and 90s and stuff. But yeah, I think it was like, hey, but it was like, end of the day, you're looking for your family is kind of like who the ones that are around you. And a lot of times people fast forward after their formative years and they look when they're our age and who is your family? It's like, it's your friend, it may be somebody else, that may not necessarily be some. So I think that's something that's also fluid versus fixed, where it's got to always be blood.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, and that's interesting. So, I mean, I love that you're being open about that, because I think, at that age, you start to think about like alone, why was I abandoned, things like that. So how much was running around, you seemed like you're in a good spot. You were doing a lot of things. Was that still something that was rolling around in the back of your head, or did you just kind of push it away?
Yeah, I mean, it's there. It's part of who I am and part of how you think about things. But I mean, I guess the way I'm wired, I'm more of I'm a now and tomorrow kind of guy versus, in the past. But also one of the things I also recognize is, one of my areas of improvement, or just a fact is like my people go, hey, remember this story 15, 20 years ago? I'm like, look, man, I put that experience in my rucksack, and that informed me to get better, faster, stronger for the next thing I'm looking for. So for me, it was always like me spending that time going back in the past and trying to recreate it. Like there's no value add in that for me. So I was like, I've got issues in life in front of me now. So how am I going to deal with those things? And so, and that's kind of how I just kind of live things. It's like the today and the tomorrow. And you still learn lessons from the history and those things in their past, but that I don't live in the past.
Yeah, I was just more. I didn't put it that way.
Yeah,
at the age of like, I mean, I mean, that's a good thing to do, because I mean, you get stuck. I mean, a lot of us get stuck in the past, and that's what it's not healthy for anybody. We can't change the past, and what happened in the past happened in the past, and usually living in the past just brings up, for me at least, with shame. Just not great things all the time. I mean, I can focus on the great memories, but if you look at the past, a lot of it is what we kind of dwell on what went bad or what went well and why it's not going well again. So it kind of is a defeating, thing. Not, I try to stay present, like you said before. I try not even to like look into the future, because we can't predict the future. You know what I mean? I try to stay in the present moment, because my mind works like the opposite way. I'm trying to, control the future. You know what I mean? I put a lot of pressure on myself or other people who have expectations of how things are going to go. And when they don't, they don't, I'm usually upset by it. Or like, I just, recently in my transformational process, I've just been like, hey, I got to turn that stuff over to a higher power. You know what I mean? I can't control what's going to happen in my life. I can't walk around like, why did this happen? Why didn't that happen? I can only just be present in what I'm doing today. You know what I mean? Yeah,
it's absolutely. I was going to kind of bring that up. It's but you already made it up. You made your own point. So
yeah. But no, so you grew up. I mean, what's interesting, I love when I think you're the third West Pointer we've had, but I grew up in it. But like a lot of people, when I read your bio, like what people don't realize is how well-rounded most West Point cadets or military go to the service academies are. So you grew up doing a lot of different stuff. You were playing basketball. You were in the jazz band. You were in the German club doing student government. Was that just, was that being, play tennis? Was that all like just natural for you, or were you kind of just, what was, was that just David, or were you?
I think my father would say I'm one of those guys that like, if I'm not doing anything, I get bored, and then you start doing dumb shit. Right. And so I think he recognized that early on and got me engaged in a lot of things, but I also like to be in a lot of different things. So I'm kind of one of those, I guess, kind of like a generalist. I like to go really wide, but not necessarily deep. And every now and then I'll double click on some things, but then like, once I get it and I'm good, like like I said, it's in the rucksack, and then that helps inform it. So yeah.
So any other siblings with
Nope. Just me, just Army of one. I've got cousins and everything else and family, spread out. And my wife, will talk about her. She's German. So we've got the whole German connection, and we got, extended family there. But yeah, it was, and we're all in, the DC area. Right. And I think that's another challenge of military service is I remember when my first duty station was in Germany in 96. And, that's when you write letters to people and everything else. And so I was writing letters to folks, and it's almost like, it felt like when you're deployed or you're in the military, it felt like you're in jail because you're forgotten about, like you locked down, but you come back to life. And so, but when you come back to life, everyone still moved on and they kept living kind of thing. And so it's it's been an interesting thing to be like, how do you try to maintain connections with family, friends when you're scattered all over the place? So I think that's kind of the double-edged sword of military service, where you get to see and experience, and you're getting friends all over the world, but you don't have those deep roots, right?
Yeah, I've heard that a lot of the guests. It's the same thing, because when you leave, you're gone. Like, a lot of times you don't hear stories of where people go back and they eventually do have to retire. But yeah, you come back 20 years later, and everybody in Lewis Center has moved on. They're doing their own thing.
Right.
And you've moved on too.
Yeah.
I found out too that for me, like going in the service, not that it's it's better than anything else, but you do grow up a lot quicker than if you were having trouble growing up.
Yeah.
You look at life a little bit different. You've seen the world differently, right? That's another thing too, is like, especially, I graduated from high school in '90, so we're real close at the time.
Yeah.
And so, we were seeing things, but we're exposed to things that other people weren't. So yeah, you kind of come back and you're not as close as you thought you were,
right.
and you're different. I mean, and for a long time I struggled with that, but now I'm okay with it. It's just, it is what it is,
I'm actually glad you brought that up, because that's another thing, right? Is people, only child, and you used to be being alone. I think that's another. You add on all of those deployments and those experiences that you've had in the military, and you are just profoundly different, and you're not that same, David that they're used to seeing. And so that's one thing in terms of how you reintroduce yourself back into that. But I think it's also that tends to start going along in terms of being lonely, which talks about thoughts of suicide. And I think you and I have gotten past that point where we've had our crises throughout our life, and now we're on the other end and we have that perspective. But there are other folks that are lonely and they stay alone, and then that's where it ends, right? Mm-hmm. And so I know we bring it up. It's like, we all need to do, as a veteran community, better on checking up on each other.
Yeah. And
stop talking about it and doing it, right? Yeah. Once a day, just text somebody, whatever it is, right? And I think we gotta really start living the values that we all, like, we're in uniform doing.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we talk about a lot on the podcast. Is my alma mater, we were making jokes about it before. We have this buddy check thing, and I have such a fucking racket about it, because it's like it's during a couple of days of the month they want you to do it, and like the whole premise is okay, but it's right. But you, like, really a real buddy check. It's not. Right. It has to be more detailed. It has to be really checking in on guys and gals and making sure we're really asking. Like, ask somebody how they're fucking doing, and don't just wait for them to say, okay, I'm doing okay, and then launch into what you're doing. Like, listen to what's going on. I think that's the problem with that buddy check thing. Is it's like, buddy checking needs to be going on all the time. It needs to be where both people are, and I have it. A lot of it was, when I look back at it, there was a lot of people that were, in my life that were generally concerned about me, and I got really good at just telling them, lying to them about how I was doing, or just kind of bullshit. And that's the one thing you got to look through. You got to really look at people and talk about it and understand. I have it now that, like, man, nobody goes through childhood unscathed. Right. Nobody goes through the warrior class unscathed. Nobody goes through life unscathed. So, like, we can all sit down. I can sit around and pretend like the best of them. Like, I'm like the most resilient person, and I'm not bothered by stuff. That's a fucking lie. And that literally drove me to want to kill myself. Yeah. So I think a lot of it, that's a great point. It's just, I have it that you got to be, like, relentless about it, and you got to be, like, authentic about it. Cause I think that's a lot of what I don't see. Is I see people that do the, it's around that military. Like, we talked about this before, but, like, when somebody walks up and is like, "Oh, I thank you for your thank you for your service," right? Like, I don't fault those people at all, but it's like, it's a very, like, what do you, like, okay, I really support the military. Okay, what are you doing to support it? It's like, it's the same thing with us with this. Is it's something that we have to fix ourselves, but, like, checking in and being authentic and being resilient,
right?
Like, just asking the hard questions, man. And then, like, looking at people saying, like, I know this guy is suffering. He just doesn't want to say it, or this gal, and just keep at it until they feel comfortable. And, I've found a lot of that is the mutual vulnerability, right? Like, so I'm not going to talk to anybody. I used to not want to talk to anybody who I didn't feel like rated, like being able to talk to me or have a conversation. So I don't know if rate's the right word, but just that I didn't know that you weren't feeling the same way as me, because I was, if you were asking me how I was doing, part of me wanted to look good, a large part of me. So I was giving you that whole, I'm not going to tell you how I'm really doing. Right. Like, now I'm different. Like, I can tell you that I struggle. I still struggle. You know what I mean? I still have rough days, you know?
Let me flip it actually, because you brought up a good point about the rated part. And I think this is talking. So when you said rated, is that, would that be like, you would only be talking to like military folks who had gone through the same experience, right? Or
so I guess when I say rated, it was more of like, so I would, in the past, I had it that if you were in the military, you had nothing to, you could have nothing to say about the military, which is not, it's just not right thinking. A lot of it is like, again, if it was more, not it was rated, it was more of like, I was trying to say it looked good, is like, I was not going to show any weakness.
Right.
To you,
yeah.
Especially if we've been equals in what we're doing. So if we start talking about, like what we've done in our military career, and you've done some of the same stuff, I wasn't going to throw out to you that I really didn't want to deploy. I didn't really want to leave my 2 young kids and my wife. Oh. Right. There's a part of me that didn't want to do that. I couldn't walk around telling people that when I'm company commander. Like, so even afterwards, when you start talking about that, and I think that's the problem with the warrior classes, everyone thinks that we're like these robot people that don't have these feelings. We do have these feelings. Right. So that's what I mean. I wasn't going to do that. Like, I wasn't going to have those conversations. So I don't even know if I was really having them. I think everybody that knows me, I mean, I don't think, I don't think my dad or my wife really knew how close I was to suicide. And so it's the same, it's what we hear all the time. Right. When someone says, oh gosh, Che killed himself, they're surprised. Yeah, because we've never been honest with each other. So now the mutual vulnerability is what is important. As soon as I tell you that I'm struggling, that I'm not okay, that I'm having a bad day, it's okay, that all the work, that I'm doing all this work today and I'm still feeling really down, all of a sudden that person is going to be like, okay, me too. That's what I finally did. And that's what Saber Warrior did to me, is like that mutual vulnerability to finally know that it's okay not, like you said, it's okay not to be okay, and that everybody's suffering. Yeah. And when you have the vulnerability, when you open up to someone, that's the key weight of all this. I mean, that's when you can be open to what's going on with you, everyone's going to be comfortable with you. So if you're walking around, all armored up, like nothing's bothering you, you're, I'm not fazed by anything. Our warrior class is not going to fucking say, oh yeah, but I'm not doing okay. I was scared when I was deployed, David. You know what I mean? That's what I've seen before. Right. Like, and if you were the same age, if we would have been like a company commander probably said, yeah, you know what? I really don't want to be over here in Afghanistan. I'd rather be home with my family. What would you have said to me? You probably would have gotten relieved. It would have been, that's what I'm saying. It wasn't like, okay. Oh yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're absolutely. But then I'm wondering nowadays, as you interact with veterans who, more recent veterans and stuff, I understand that there was, I guess a push for people with mental health and people be open with some of those things. But I wonder if there's still, there's still career implications to that, right? If I go get help, while I'm still active duty, I mean, I've been out of the game for a while with that, but I still fear that that's anything that's going on in all the world is like, and it shouldn't be, right? Because like you said before, just because I had that feeling as a company commander, like I was feeling that doesn't mean I'm not doing my job. And you're still human. It was just a part of something I need to process. I'm still doing my job. Yeah. But there's a part of me that's, when I was focused on focused on the lie, the denial, right? That everything's okay. Things weren't okay. I was numbing in other ways. Right. I mean, we know what that was like. And I mean, I'm in a different spot, so I'm not trying to. I'm pretty honest about things now. So like a lot of that was all a lie. Like when I was going to work, I pretended like I loved going to work at 4:30 in the morning and coming back at 8 o'clock at night. Dude, I was missing all kinds of shit. My wife hated. My wife resented me. Right. My kids didn't really know who I was. Right. And so what did I do? I either wanted to to watch TV, I wanted to drink, and I wanted to have sex. That was it. Yeah. And those were my ways to numb. I didn't want to talk about anything. I couldn't have a conversation and say like, dude, why am I going to work? Why am I coming home at 8 o'clock at night? Right. And the reason I was coming over 8 o'clock at night was to look good. And also to not have to deal with, okay, if I go home at 8, the kid's already in bed. I don't have to take care of, I don't have to do this. I don't have to do that. And I think it's interesting how we, well, with hindsight, right? It was like, well, we get on the other end of that. I wish I had opened up to my wife or my family earlier and things would have been better kind of thing. But it's like, it's hard to get over like that,
I don't know what it is, that hubris, that thing that we have in us, especially as men, military men, and we're not going to be doing that. And then I think about you're talking, I'm like, yeah, I was doing a lot of that too, right? It was, the job was the thing, was the mission. And then you provide and bring, money back home and provide for your family. But like, you got to do more than that. And so, and then you stack on deployments and so I think my 21 years in 2 months, I spent, I think it was like 9 years deployed in the field, right? So my head was in the pillow somewhere else outside of my family. Yeah. So I get home and like, they've moved on without me kind of thing, right? And then I'm watching TV, I'm drinking, I'm chilling, but I'm not really doing stuff with the family. So you're not really there, right? So then, transparency to my youngest son, Jeremy, right? So, I think he's missed out on, a present father in a lot of ways, right? Because it was easier to kind of flipping from, I didn't have issues from that you had from your perspective, but, it was easier for me to like do the work, but not do the family, and then, there's repercussions to that. But once you get to your crisis moment, and then you look around at your people, right? Then that your wife and your trusted advisors are the ones that they don't, have that shame. They don't look at you differently once you tell them about that issue, what you got. They're there to help support you, right? So that's that change that we have to impart amongst others is how do you get them to overcome like that initial shame or resistance to telling somebody and finding that their board of advisors, their trusted folks that they can open up to. Easier said than done, right? But it's at least where,
Yeah, I mean, I have it now that like, I don't try to fault the military is the military and the warrior class is the warrior class. These organizations exist for a reason, and we'd be wasting our time trying to talk about how we're going to change that. But the reality of it is, again, like you said, what started this part of this conversation is we have to be honest with each other. Right. Like all these, like, I mean, dude, it's clear as day to me. Like it used to be, this is the way it was. It's all kind of this lieutenant colonel, this major was a hard worker. If I look back at it, this dude wasn't going home because he didn't want to be home. He was having problems. And guess what? Being home as a major, he think about it. If you're the major that stayed there 15 hours a day, everybody was like, oh, look at Major McDowell. Oh, he's great. Like, and if you kept doing that and you were being productive, right? You got promoted, right? You look good. Everybody looked up to you. And meanwhile, it's just what you were doing. And that organization breeds that, but you have to be real. I think the thing is, I don't know if the organization will ever change where you can be completely honest about how you're doing. I have it that PTS is not a lifelong sentence. So all these things that we're going through, it's peaks and valleys, right? Like you can get through this. You can be having a bad year or so, and it just, we got to be able to talk about it. You got to be able to, if you're a leader and we'll talk about it in your book, being a leader, you got to be realistic about it. Like, I mean, I can't tell you any leader that ever told me honestly how they were feeling. Right.
That's true. It's a really good point. I think, I remember there's times I had a leader that I worked for, and I'd ask, how are you doing? Right. And trying to get some, you might get like some stuff, right. But they're not going to like open up to that person necessarily. But you're right. I mean, those leaders, that's one thing I remember when I took command of Charlie Battery 2-4 in Fort Sill, Oklahoma. We left Germany and we went to Fort Sill. I had a young baby, a new wife. She's German, never been in the States, never lived in the States. And I was like, I'm going to go to Fort Sill, Oklahoma. They're not going to deploy. We were the first ones on the block there that were leaving, from there and stuff, right? But yeah. So.
But I take it back to the basics of like, if you remember, I don't know what your roles were, if you did like cadre at West Point or whatever, but just think about when the care that we took like at military schools where it starts off, or the care that we have in any of the police academies, AIT, whatever, like we're focused on everything, all these things to make these guys and gals very efficient, all their well-being. But the one thing that we never talk about is, are you doing okay?
Right. That's true.
Like mentally, are you okay? And I have that is like a force multiplier. If the military could ever get rid of this whole thing of like, let's get people, let's let people know it's okay, that we don't have to numb and we're drinking, we're doing all these risky behaviors just because we can't deal with what's going on. Because I can't tell you I'm having a bad thing. I can't talk to you about what's going on with my wife and my my family because I'm afraid I'm going to get demoted or I'm not going to get the next promotion, things like that. So it's just interesting that like that's the basics of leadership. I mean, if you think about when like you were as a cadre member, I was so worried about every part of their life.
Right.
Did you, did you have a fingerprint on
they're like your
thing?
kids. They become your kids in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Right?
But, you can tie it to your kids. Are we looking out to them? Are we really talking to our kids and finding out if our kids are okay? I think that's a part of everybody's just being the basic of the same thing that you're worried about someone's health. The other part of the health is mental health.
Right.
And I think you started off the conversation great about like, do you something's got to change. We've got to be more on. We've got to have conversations like this where you're realistic about what you've done. I mean, I could tell you as an Army leader, I never gave a fuck about anybody's mental health because I didn't care about mine.
In addition to that, I agree with that. I think, the other way is, the culture of the military at the time was, you show that kind of weakness, just almost like when I was thinking about sick call. I was thinking about the other day, I was like, you do PT? And I was like, man, got to get up at 6. You got to go there. And if you feel like crap, you still got to go there, go to sick call and everything else. And I get part of the thing. I got a few kind of thoughts that you're talking about for a while there in terms of different ideas, but it's like, how could we, or how could DOD or the military balance screening for, serious mental health issues and screening people out before they kind of come in and provide that care and feeding for them while they're in, and make that kind of like another pillar of how they do things. Right. But that would probably require like an investment and understanding of that holistic kind of person versus I'm taking this guy off the block and I'm breaking him down to nothing to make him a warfighter to go shoot, move, and communicate. I mean, that's like, how do you kind of break through like kind of like talk that warrior ethos where it's just like, go rub some dirt on it. I say that a lot to my friends and family and stuff, right? Which is really counter to what we're saying. It's like, how you doing? You're feeling okay. It's like, I'll just go rub some dirt on it. So, how do you change the mentality of an organization that kind of feels that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think.
Yeah, I'm not answering.
That's a great. I mean, but I have it that if you can. I mean, I have a couple thoughts on that. If you can figure that out and promote mental health the same way you promote physical fitness and move and communicate and all these other things and leadership, it's just a force multiplier. The fact of the matter is, we're never going to change that because, I have it that like, just listen to your story is an interesting one. It's one I've heard, many a times, like you even said it, like you grew up outside of the military where you start seeing the military, you start seeing stuff, you find out 11 years old, you're adopted. You feel like you don't really belong. Holy cow, look what we have for you.
Right.
The U.S. military, and you are going to belong, buddy. You're going to look at this. You know what I mean? And unfortunately, and fortunately, a lot of the people that have had, some significant or just have that's childhood trauma, finding out that you're adopted. Right. But that's what drives a lot of us to the military in the first place, is because we're looking for some way to belong, to connect, right? And that's what the organization does. It's great. We're not going to change that, but I think, there's a way they could do it. They obviously could do it. They just don't want to do it. Because it won't help the recruiting numbers. I'll tell you that.
I actually got to tell you my West. I gave you another piece of the origin story, right? So, so you're applying, I was applying to colleges and stuff. And my parents also told me this story a few years ago too, right? They were like out west on some kind of vacation, and they ran into somebody who was affiliated with the military academy. And they're like, "Hey, have you considered, West Point or something for your kid to go to college?" And I think that got the ball rolling, right? But so then we had like this guy, Captain Steptoe, and he came in and did a house. He came to a visit, and he came with the uniform and all that stuff. And I was like, okay, that's pretty cool. But then I went through the process, and I got into West Point like early admission, like December or so. So it was like January, and I was in like an AP English course, and we had a substitute English teacher, and all the kids were talking about like what schools they're getting into. And like, I got into, Dickinson, I got into University of Maryland, whatever it is. And some girl blurted out, she said, David's going to West Point. And then the substitute teacher, she paused for a second, and she said, he's not going to make it. And I was like, challenge accepted. Yeah. So it was interesting. It's like, so I think is a thing about it. Yes, it was probably part of that belonging piece, but it was also I got to prove someone wrong. And then I remember the first day, our day, which, that's a whole kind of crazy experience and stuff. But, right before, somewhere in the middle of the day, I had like a second to myself, and I'm washing my face in the sink and looking in the mirror. I'm like, what the hell am I doing here? What the hell am I doing? This is nuts. But it was just like, you can't stop. Yeah. You have to finish what you started. And so even though I had like those, military and what it means to be an American and patriotism, which is love for one's country, period. I think that, I wasn't necessarily like I wanted to join the military. So I think I was one of those kind of late bloomers in that sense, where it's like, I got thrown in, and I didn't step foot in West Point till our day. So I got thrown into the fire, went through that whole thing. And even as I got commissioned as a second lieutenant, that's where I think it was easier to be like, now you've got people to care about. And then you were able to kind of ride that. And then it would just kind of started to grow at some point. You know what I mean? So
I just laugh because it's just the time of when we were doing this. There was no videos of reception day. There's none of that stuff.
That's true.
Like, so you really had no idea what you were walking into. So it's like those moments are just like,
we were in the gym and like, you had your parents and they had all the new cadets there. And then this cadet in the red sash comes out on the basketball thing. He goes, all right, cadets, we're new cadets. You have 30 seconds to say goodbye to your parents. Cadets, you go to the left door, parents, you go to the right. I was like, golly, this is real. But,
what did I do?
Yeah.
But it was free. I'm kidding. I'm joking.
That's
No, I'm joking. No, but I mean, I think that's, I think you hear that story too, is like a lot of it was, I share my story, but I definitely want to serve my country. There's a part of me that was super patriotic, but there was a part of me too that was like, I want to prove people wrong. I'm going to do this kind of stuff because and that's the motivation of for years that you hear a lot of people do. I mean, you hear stories of everybody. It's like, why did you do that? Because this person told me no, I could never do it. My dad said this, my mom said that, and proving people wrong is
that's a strong
huge
motivator.
Motivator to do things. So you shared a little bit. You go to West Point. You kind of really you jump into the deep end pretty quick. Like what was that first? The initial. What do I get myself into? Like what was it like? What was the big struggle for you? Going to West Point.
I always say it's a good place to be from, not a good place to be. I think I also layer in, the fact that I'm African American. And, I remember like sophomore year, I had like a little crew of friends and thought they were little tight guys forever. And me and this other black cadet, we're walking down the hallway and we're going they're all hanging out in one room and stuff. And they're talking about what they're going to do for the weekend. And they're like, hey, should we invite that guy and David? And they're like, no, he's not one of us. They're not one of us. I was like, whoa. But, and I'm not saying I experienced like a whole bunch of racism and things like that, at the academy, and people certainly have. And, I respect their experience. But for me, it was just being around folks that just had, these super type A personalities, very driven. Everything is evaluated in being, ranked and rank ordered, military, academic, and physical. And so, I was just kind of like trying to find my place, right? Trying to find that sense of belonging. But I just think it was just one of those, like, you just have to really be really good about time management. And so I think it was just like starting to see people that were operating at a higher level was like motivating to me as well. I was like, let's also get to that same level. So I think it was a good experience in terms of having that camaraderie and everything else. But it always just felt like because of the military, because of the rank order system, because that determines what branch you're going to get, determines what your first duty station. So it always felt like it was always friendly competition amongst your fellow cadets. Like we're bros for life, but I'm still trying to make sure I get that next thing above you, kind of thing, right? So I graduated. I hadn't looked back till I told you I'd been there like last year. It was like 23 years. My wife took them there like a month after 9/11, which is surreal. So we're driving up from DC and we go up to New York, and you're looking at New York on the right side, and like you don't see the Twin Towers. And I was like, damn. Of course, we know what happened after that and stuff, right? But
Yeah, so like I think that it's interesting to bring up that how you spoke West Point, because I think that's a key. The thing is that's exactly what the warrior class is. That's what the military is. Everything is rated against everyone. I mean, every single thing you do, you're rated against everybody that's your rank, that has your job, and it always promotes you to like, it is great to. I mean, it's humbling always when you think, for me it was like when you started to think that. I had it that I was like shit hot and stuff. Then you start seeing like, wow, I'm not as good as I think I am. So there's a motivator to that. But there's always that, like you said, you do nothing, or I was doing nothing that was going to knock me down to that next level. I mean, which was, again, ties into, I'm just going to do what I can.
Right.
Yeah, I am. And you are buddies, but you're still competing. Like that's what people don't realize. It's a strict thing. It starts, same thing in military school. It's the same thing. Everything is graded. Everything's you're compared on every single thing. Like who's faster? Like can you run faster? Can you do more push-ups? Yeah. It seems good. Who has a higher GPA? Who's better at the leadership camp? And then it's the same thing that ties into once you become
right.
And it's not just officers. It just starts that whole thing. And yeah, we're not going to do anything to not fit in or to excel. You know what I mean? That's how I was. I would never admit back then that somebody was like, especially West Pointer, because in our how we are as officers, like you know what I mean? Like I would if I was a West Pointer, I would do everything I can to like make them look bad kind of, or to compete against them, because like that was the thing. Like I wasn't going to admit that like these guys were smarter than me, that I really couldn't get into West Point, you know what I mean? Cause my math was shit, you know what I mean? But, but you know what I mean? Like that's that thing you have. There's a competition, and then there's a structure of, that as in the Army, the West Point has meaning, right? So you come in there and you're expected to be different than we are as an ROTC guy. Yeah. You know what I mean? And it's just, that's what that whole culture breeds. And you just got to either get on board and you go with it, or you don't. Well,
but at the end of the day though, right, even though we're still competing in certain levels of competition, like we're still a unit. And then when we get sent, to go across the berm or go across the border, like that guy's got your back. And, like a lot of those politics kind of like, fall away.
Yeah, I think I'm talking probably because you talk about 9/11 and when we all started deploying, it got real. I think it all changed too. A lot of those things changed. But before that, like, if you remember those days before 9/11, there was a lot of it was like who would run the best range, who could qualify. It was all these things we're doing, and you had a shared purpose, but you were competing each other.
Yeah,
I think,
true. Yeah,
and there's nothing wrong with it. That's what makes the organization work. That's what makes it powerful. And that's why. That's why I think that if you're that person that's like in the middle of the road, you can rise up, because you start to look at all those things that you're talking about. Can I run faster? Like we make a joke, like you probably heard with officers, you can be, as long as you can do well on your PT score, you're a good officer, right? It didn't matter what else you could do sometimes, right? Remember that? Yeah. You had some guys that was like, if you couldn't run, then you weren't a good officer.
Or guys go to Ranger school, right? And I say, like, get a Ranger stab, and it's like, boom, they got that ethos and run off of there. But I did one thing talking about the ROTC versus West Point case. We were talking, I think there was a study that talked about like, once you get commissioned, like, the West Point graduates will kind of be, they'll perform higher because they've kind of gone through that, and then kind of equalizes after kind of like captain years and everything else. But the other thing I think is we also don't talk about in terms of like military and even in the corporate world and civilian world is, the value of who knows what you can do and your network and the people that can help advocate for you, right? So I think one of the other things is, we also do a good job of shoot, moving, and communicating and doing your job, but we're heads down and thinking that there's going to be a leader or a manager somewhere that's going to like, oh yeah, I see him doing really good. Let's go bring him. It's like, you've got to be more deliberate in terms of what you want and how you want it, and make sure you get people on board to kind of support you. So that's one of the learnings that I had early on was like, I remember, I think I was like a first lieutenant in Germany, and like the division artillery 1-star general was looking for a new aide, and they were looking, they were interviewing lieutenants. First thing that popped in my head was, man, that's ass kissing. I ain't doing that. But what if I maybe took an opportunity and I tanked the interview? Right. And I was like, because it was Miller time somewhere. We were going to Nuremberg or wherever the hell we were going in Germany to get it in and stuff. Right. So, that was my focus. So say all I had to say is that, at least, take the opportunity to see if there's someone or something you can make a connection with that, can, we don't say help you, but understand what you bring to the table, and they can advocate for you in other venues and places.
Yeah. I see like, one of my classmates is just pinned on the 2nd star. So you probably have classmates that are in that world. And the one thing I look at all those.
Yeah, but Common, the dean of my classmate. I'm like freaking sitting there in a computer in a corporate office, and these guys, it's like,
but you look back and you look at those, like when I look at what those guys have done, like the jobs he's taken, and those jobs, he's put himself out there. He's taken some challenging jobs. He's done those jobs, like you said, like, I don't want to go be an aide de camp and kiss ass. Yeah, that's a part of it, but you're getting exposed to a lot of stuff that a lot of people don't, there's that balance of everything. And a lot of it, when you look at those, if you ever look at an aide, a lot of them do pretty well. It's
That's
exactly
true.
that, because they've got to level of like that strategic looking that they're not going to see whether, it's at that first, the lieutenant level the first time.
I was thinking platoon battery. I'm not thinking, corps level, division level. It just opens your mind up. So I see that.
And I mean, that's the thing. When I look back, I mean, I have my aide de camp story. I did not get selected by the guy that got the job. And I ran into him in my advanced course, and evidently this guy was a complete tyrant. So I've been so thankful that I didn't get the job. He actually said to me, "I wish you had gotten the job." I'm like, "Well, I didn't, thank God." But that's fine. But those times good. So like, West Point, was artillery on your radar, or was it just where you fell in the OML?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. Everyone's got some people come in there and know what they want to do. And so I had no idea, but I think they try to push, combat arms and also infantry on you, right? So I remember at Camp Buckner, our sophomore year, they had like a branch orientation thing, and they were showing little cool helicopters and the tanks and all that. And then they just boomed their files like, I'm going field artillery. But I didn't want to be like and that was before this, like 95, 96. So we're like peacekeeping. This is all peace right now, right? So I'm thinking, all right, if something breaks out, I don't want to be the guy kicking indoors, because I knew that like if I want to go to Ranger School and do infantry, that like I wasn't wired for that. And so I knew that at the time that wasn't something I probably would be able to successfully do, because it wasn't in me at that time. But I loved field artillery. And so at sophomore year, I did that. And then, that was the thing I went into. I knew we were like making an impact, but we weren't like right there kicking down doors and stuff. And then, fast forward to Iraq, and there was a couple of fire missions. I'm like, I'm ahead of like the main effort and stuff. And, I'm just like, I'm out here in Indian country all about myself and stuff. Right. But, and even though we talk about like the pitfalls of military service and maybe the cost of military service, there's a shit ton of positive stories, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, we loved a lot of those different things. And I'm grateful that I was able to deploy 94 soldiers and come back with 94 soldiers that lost limb or eyesight. Like, that's my crowning achievement, right? Yeah. So when I go work for some corporation and I'm ticky-tacky on the computer, it's like, you can't beat that. Cannot beat that. Yeah. So I think also, just pivoting a little bit, is, I also try to lean on those positive moments in my life, like when things get dark and you're like, well, I'm going to get through this, whatever that's in front of you kind of thing. And it's like, I've been through it before. I've overcome things in the past. And so try to build, that, I'll take no one in the past, but like grab that rucksack that you have and pull those positive memories out, at least help you as you get through your next step in the next day or so. Right. So.
Yeah. I mean, I'm with you 100% with there's tons of positive things about the military. There's, if I look at it, a lot of positives, outweigh the cost, right? And some aspects of it. But yeah, for me, it was just, and we could talk about this later, but to me, it wasn't, I can always understand what I was doing successful and all those things I did. But like my transition into the civilian world, when you go from, these op tempo things where you're doing these kind of things, like what you consider to be like a purpose, like what I consider to be a huge purpose. Like, don't get me wrong. Like I was really into doing what I was doing. I mean, so when I got out, you all of a sudden, I lost my purpose. I lost my friends.
I call it North Star.
Yeah. I lost everything, all those things important. And so like, when you look back, like my first job was with Penske Truck Leasing. And I was like, what the hell am I doing? What I mean? I went from, doing these things, having all this power and it is power. Like, you talk about those things, this purpose to like, what is my purpose? And it took me, 20 some years to find that again. Yeah. And that's a difficult thing because, it's kind of like the drug coming off of the military. I think because those things are going to happen to you. Like, so what was your hardest thing? Was it losing your purpose, your friends, or your job?
Probably the purpose. And I think you're right. I mean, you lose that network. You lose that, that group that you interact with and stuff. But yeah, I think it was the job in terms of having that purpose. And so when you come work for a corporation and you work in a certain area within that corporation, like the focus is just like on that. And, what we write and we talk about in the book is, we lose that, is that North Star. But how do you recreate that North Star in non-military organizations, right? So you got to find that thing that motivates that person at Penske to go do that, right? That may be a hard example, right? So that was a hard thing in terms of being like, what am I doing every day? But then it turned into, well, I'm getting a paycheck and that's good enough. And, and then you start coasting, right? Then you stop growing. So I think that's one of the other challenges that I've also been dealing with. And it's hard for us to understand how to navigate the corporate world because, every 3 years, the Army, hey, boom, here's your PCS orders. You're going to Germany. Right. You're going here. Good luck kind of thing, right? And so it was in a lot of ways easier to be able to be like, okay, I know what I got to do when I go to a new organization and how to get started and go do like that. That's a good practice. But then how do you, pivot within the corporate world to find something that you really, truly, value? And I think that also is talking as well, right? Because that's, in terms of you can also be like, hey, because eventually that's going to turn into, somewhere where you may not be getting out of. And it's like, I want folks to be like hating what they do, and so that I don't have the answer to it, but, for me, it was that. And so I think right now I honestly, I've settled, right? Because I think, if my perfect role would be start my own company or do something like that. But do I have the runway? Do I have the motivation? Do I have enough money saved up to take care of the family? So it's like, you got to do the work. And so that's one of the things I'm also working on in terms of, what that final thing looks like for me.
So if you were to say what your purpose is now, what would you say it is?
Gosh. I honestly, I don't know. That's a difficult question. I think it's complicated. I think, part of it is talking about the mental health and some of those challenges. Part of my purpose is just staying around and being here and just being present. I think, so a lot of that has been trying to find a purpose is trying to also do a lot of introspection. So like the book and the other one we talk about, that's really helped me kind of figure that out. I want it to be, family, and I'm a family guy and that's all I do. And that's all I think about. But, that's got to be a transition for me as well. So that's not also my purpose. So I don't really know. So I want to thank you for stumping me.
No, it's just, this is, I love these conversations because that's the thing is I can tell you that my struggle is just up and down and all around, right? About what my purpose was like. So it's interesting now, like I've talked about a lot, my purpose is coming back from men now, like to be there for other men, to be a brother. Right. And it doesn't tie into anything other than just what I have that to be, right? Like I love hearing your perspective on that. Like, my purpose is not to be a dad. It's not to be a husband. I mean,
and then people don't like that. I don't say it in a bad way, right?
Because because you're comparing to something. It's just, to me, it's I'm a husband. I'm dedicated husband. I'm dedicated father. But that's not my purpose, right? I have to find something that, like, that same thing is when I look back at it. When I look about that purpose that I left the military, that I thought was my purpose, and I now know through all the work I've been doing, in the past few years, that really wasn't my purpose either. It was just a journey for me to find it. You know what I mean? And that's kind of, it's not an easy question. You know what I mean? And I didn't mean to try to stump you on it, but just to think about it, because it's just because I have it that, like I said, I thought that was my purpose for a long time. I never knew what it was until I started, doing the work I'm doing.
That's that thing that gets you out of the bed, that thing that fires you up. You think about stuff you did. I mean, that's that purpose, passion stuff, right?
Yeah,
so
it's like, really coming back and being your brother's keeper, right? To be like, I can tell you that, like, I had a phone call today with a brother from Saber Warrior, and probably the most, other than the conversation you and I are having right now, is the most important conversation I've had during the day. Mm-hmm. That's it's an important call. I mean, it's not it's not that it's the only type of thing you have, but it's important to be able to have that person I can talk to that we can talk about. We can talk about how we're really doing those. That's an important thing, what I mean? But being able to, like this, I have that. This is part of my purpose too, to come back and share people's stories and talk about what a lot of people don't want to talk about. And to hopefully help that one person. I mean, this is, holy shit, I feel the same way. I've just been afraid to say it or whatever. So it's just, it's interesting. I don't, that's what, and I think that's tied into, like, where I've gotten my most satisfaction, really. Right. No one's going to know. I don't get a star for talking to that guy today. I don't get a medal. I don't get a pat on the back. I just know
but you may have
I really wanted to have that conversation point for both of us. I mean, that's purpose. I mean, to me, and I think that's a lot of the things and I only bring that up because that's, I think the double-edged sword of the military is that, or even the warrior classes, that's what our purpose became. And all of a sudden that's what we thought that's all we were ever going to be.
Yeah. You never like, walked along the beach contemplating what you're going to be. Cause like you're told what you got to, and they lay out the golden path for you, and there's really nothing else to think about. That's also something I consider when I retired at 21 years, and you see those guys who do like 30 and they do more and stuff. I know they get hooked up on the back end and stuff, but I was always like, I wanted to get into the corporate or, transition as early as possible to make that runway for me to be, in the corporate world easier than just getting out. But I also, I did like 8 years of field artillery, and then 2004, we were leaving. Well, 2003, we were leaving Iraq and going to Kuwait, and the brigade commander at the time, I guess he's Major General Boozer, I think he retired. He called me up and he's like, all right, I got you for one more year. So you can either be another battery commander, you can have a second command, or you can be my brigade S2, the intelligence officer. So I took the second command on that one. I lost my train of thought on that one. What are we talking about there?
I think you're transitioning to the 8 years as an artilleryman, and then
and then thank you. And so in 2004, and this is one of those like moments of clarity I had even like in my 20s, was I was like, I knew we were going to be like at war for a hot minute, and I was like, I also was like, I don't know if being a field artillery officer, with all the great things that is a transferable skill for a corporate organization. So I was able to switch over into the acquisition corps. So I did contracting and program management and some of those things. And so I was able to work with DOD civilians. And so I was able to kind of like demilitarize myself over the last 10, 12 years of my career. So for me, my transition working with like only civilians as a civilian, if that will, was a lot easier because, I kind of like got exposed to them early, right? I acted like it's a whole different class of people, right? But,
No, I get it, because I think you're the first person we've talked about that. So like for people who aren't listening, as an officer, you can get your functional area at a certain part in your career, and then you can either say tactical, which would be stand field artillery, or you can do other things. And that was a funny thing too, because that when I look back at the time, everybody was like, you got to stay in, you got to stay in the tactical part of it, and like all this kind of stuff. And then I was the same way when I'd see people go to like acquisition corps or some of these other stuff. I was like, what is this guy doing? You know what I mean? But go back, and that's another opportunity to just expand and see a different part of the organization. And I used to be like, if you don't stay in the line companies and the divisions, that you're, you're not doing it right. But then you do look and see how successful that you do get a leap ahead. You do get to see a different part of the military that most people don't. You start working with civilians, which is different. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Especially if you've been in for 20 some years or 10 years, it changes,
And they provide vital, I mean, it's like, monster grows, and you need a certain amount of care and feeding for it, and they're the ones, and they're also that continuity with, a lot of those things and stuff. But yeah, so it was interesting.
So let's rewind a little bit. So you met Monica, I'm assuming, your first duty assignment in Germany then?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Be careful. I think she's listening or watching. I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, so I met, we
she's watching you.
Yeah. So we met stationed there.
I'm giving you a chance to get brownie points.
Okay.
That's why
all right. Okay. Here we go. So and this is like back in the 90s when people used to go to the club. Remember, like try doing that stuff. And so it sounds cheesy, but this is true. Like saw her across the dance floor, and we started dancing, exchange information, start dating, and then we got married on 9/9/99. Boom. Cannot forget it and have not forgot it. So then, like I said, we had our first son also in 99, David Justin. And then we had Jeremy in, 2007. And I think for her, like her experience from being, 100% German, she has 9 brothers and sisters, none of them speak English, and, they're close to military because there was a couple, they're in near Bamberg, Germany. So like they had Bamberg, they had Würzburg, they had not Wiesbaden, had a couple other Kitzingen and some other ones there. And so they were exposed to a lot of military folks throughout, growing up and stuff. But, it just felt like it was a, when I took command of Charlie Battery, she became like the lead of the family readiness group, right? It's kind of like, the spouses club and kind of taking care of them. And so when we deployed to Iraq, we'd go to the field and, they would contact her to get insights and updates. But when we were in Iraq and stuff, I think the battalion commander and up, they had like a satellite phone, right? So they could call their family and see what's going on. But us lowly battery commanders didn't have one, and people didn't have phones like every fight, back then and stuff. And so, they would hear information from gossip that whatever our troop movements were, or when we were coming back, or some of those different things. And like they were just all getting on her. And then once we got back, it was this whole acrimonious thing. And, the NCO wives were supporting and the officer wives. And it was like real wild. It was like a reality show before a reality show was a thing. And Michelle was like, listen, I was helping you all out when you needed a ride or you needed whatever. And then now you're like, what's going on? So she got completely disillusioned from kind of like the FRG. And that was also partially part of the reason why I was like, I'm not going to subject my family to, let's try to like become a 1-star general and do all those things that you have to do if she's not, like on board with it kind of thing. Right. But, so she's been my ride or die for 26 years now.
So how many years were you guys in Germany before she came over? I got there in 97. So we were there in 4 years. Okay. And then, we went to the 9/11 and we were in Fort Sill, Oklahoma. So what was that like?
So we did total 8 years in Germany. We went back again, after that one.
So what was that move like for her coming? Like you said, tight German family coming.
Yeah.
To the U.S. I mean, what like
that was I guess I call it. We call it a significant.
What was it like for
event.
you as well too?
Yeah. Yeah. Significant emotional event. No, I mean and
I'm not joking around because this is an important part of what a lot of people don't talk about, because when people say thank you for your service, I always say like you need to thank the spouses and the kids because they're the ones that take it in the teeth a lot of the time.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think luckily we were able to go to Fort Sill, and that was, and I think she would, for a time she's like, I'd love to go back to Fort Sill. It'd be awesome because there was that military community there. Mm-hmm. There was also a strong German community there, so she had her network of friends and everything else, and so they were able to kind of like understand the United States and America in a different kind of perspective. But I was also back to the provider thing. It was like, okay, let's get your visa or green card or whatever we need to get you over here. So a lot of those like PCSE kind of things I kind of took care of, right? But from a nuts and bolts things, I mean, she was there along the ride the whole way. I mean, I'm sure now she's an American citizen and everything else and stuff, and probably more American than German. And I'll hear that tonight. But but we also took advantage of Space A. So we were going from like forget all the bases and stuff like Rhine-Main and Reverend Germany, and coming over here to the States and taking the space. I was every year we'd go back over for free, and so she get her chance to see her family and stuff. So we try to make sure that connection was there, as much as possible. For her.
The only reason I think it's just the Space A story is my dad flew down to Space A to my promotion when I got promoted as first lieutenant. And I think it was like a C-130. It wasn't even like, and he didn't even realize that no like temperature control and all that kind of stuff. So he's like, I think he showed up like he didn't have a jacket, and they dropped him off. And I'd never forget that. He was just like, but it was. I'm like, dude, was that worth it? But it was free. It was worth it. I'm like, come on, we could have spent $200. You could have had some peanuts and a drink or whatever, and not
I love
Space A is great. Yeah. But there are some stories because I think they were. I can't even remember. He flew from New York to like. I was at Hood, and I think they dropped you off in Austin because these guys, there was Marine guys that were doing some kind of refueling something or doing something. So they just basically dropped him. They literally landed to drop him off. Right. And I'm like, what is going on? This is crazy. You know what I mean? But yeah, I think they just started those back up again. I remember seeing an article that they started talking about Space A starting back up again.
I mean, it's been going. I just think it's when you're active duty, you're like category, like emergency leave, they're like category, like 1 to 6, and then like active duty is like 3. So you got a family of 4 trying to go from Ramstein to Dover, Delaware, or something. I have a higher chance than like your dad, who's in me, he was like level 6 or category 6. So the other ones always get bumped off anyway. So it's like I don't know if I'm gonna sit around for 3-4 days. For a fleet fight, right? I mean, I get for $200. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, I don't know if it's 200 anymore nowadays. I mean, goodness gracious.
No, it's just one of the. And Space A is space available. It's on a military aircraft. You can go for the people that don't know what we're talking about. It's just one of those funny perks. Like some people wait like 4 days to. Yeah. If you're retired, you don't have anything to do. Why not? Right? You could wait it out.
Yeah, we might like go to Germany. Ramstein. Look, they like at the terminal there. Like it's freaking Air Force. Yeah. I think they always say like the Air Force builds the golf courses first, and then they go back and say, hey, we need more money for the airway and all the operational stuff. But yeah, they got like this huge like hotel. It's right there, and like the PX, the Post Exchange, is like a shopping mall. You can walk through. I mean, it's like you can stay there. So we may consider doing that. So Shotzi, go ahead and delete those. We're going to Germany this summer actually, so she can cancel his tickets. We'll just go Space A.
Space A. Yeah, we'll just figure it out. We'll get there eventually. Get back hopefully. So, I mean, when that struggle, her coming over, she did have the German community, but what was going on? Was there any guilt or like, was it some stress on you bringing her back? I mean, what was
honestly, it felt like partially, I mean, I'll be honest, it was like, you're marrying into the military, and that's kind of like what we do and where we go. And we'll make sure that, generally, I'm speaking on behalf of the military, I'll make sure that you're taken care of. Now, when we got there, we stayed like in the little hotel motel on the base and stuff. And I was like, oh, it's always going to be warm. And we got there in like February, and it had like an ice storm. There's like, all this stuff over the trees, and that was crazy and stuff. But yeah, I just think I think she's also strong and resilient, right? It's not like, we also have to, talk about, where people are down. We also have to understand that people are also stronger than they may be. But, I think I didn't feel like guilt necessarily, but it was more like, hey, we got to go to the States, and we're going to do our best to make sure that you spend more time with your family as much as we can. And I think we did make a good happy medium of that. And then also, I won't say sacrifice, but, I wanted to go back to Germany too. So we were stationed actually here at the supply center at Whitehall at Defense Supply Center in Columbus at DLA, Defense Logistics Agency. And after that, we had a chance to go back to Germany one more time. So I was like, all right, let's see if we can. And what my one regret with that is I didn't like my manager at the time, who was a 06, and like HRC, like they called me and they were like, okay, do you want to stay one more year, or like what do you want to do? I was like, give me orders right now. And I think I regretted that because our parents did pass away a few years later, and we had a chance to connect with them and stuff. But it was like, what we could have had for that one more year just to be in Germany, right? And and I look back at it, I actually got screwed in my next duty location because it gave me like a job that didn't help me with career, and that probably that whole kind of stuff, right? But it's what it is.
Yeah, I mean that was a good point you brought about the resilience of the spouses, because that's one thing looking back, when I look at it, I was like, man, I don't know if I had guilt either, but I kind of took it for granted, like you said before, like this is just what it is. But like to be able for them to, like, when we would move, just to like, you're uprooting them, they've got to meet new friends. I mean, it was always like especially coming from someone who's a German national and doing that. When I look back, I mean, I never said it to my wife enough. I probably don't say it enough then. Now even is that the resilience and for them to be able to bounce back and do that, like that's the reason why most of us can do that, because they hold it down and they really just they just really adapt to it. Like, and like, I mean, it's crazy to watch if you've never seen it, like you're, 3 or 4 years, they move and I mean, everything changes. It's a different house. It's a different place. It's different schools. It's different. The kids have different friends. It's like, I mean, there's one or two, there's a small percentage that stay around, but it's literally starting over. Whereas us, we're starting over too. With one aspect of it, but we're really not. We're just, we flow into the process of what it is. Like, there's a lot more people we know. But it's just, we're when you,
and there's support for them too, for us, right? We got a whole unit and everything else to get you on board and get everything you need. Imagine the families. Like, that was another thing is when we got to Fort Sill, Oklahoma, and we were in Germany. So in Germany, they actually have like, on base, they have like a warehouse with like furniture and stuff. So if we got like a place off base or something, we could get like Army furniture instead of paying and stuff, and you can get washer, dryer, and you're good to go. Germany was my first duty location, so I didn't know. So we got to Fort Sill, and I'm going to the housing thing. I'm like, where can we get this in there? They're like, yeah, you can go to Sam's Club, or you can go to the furniture store thing, right? So that was a little bit of culture shock on that. And then I just think, also you're young, you don't make a lot of money, and you're trying to kind of go through there. So, we kind of navigated that. But, thinking about how did it help the family with the transition and PCSing back to the States or wherever, I think really it was back to the provider role. It was that's what I knew how to do, or be supportive, right? I could build this thing, or I can be around, or, I use the adage sometime, I forgot where I heard it was like, and I use it a lot. I go, what else could I be doing? right? And so that's one of the things like, well, I see dirty dishes. I can take care of that and get that out the way, right? And then it's almost like you're still serving, but you're serving your family.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, maybe that's like my love language is showing them doing things, but we don't express that to our family, but it's back to I think I'm going to get promoted, but I didn't tell anybody I want to get promoted. And I'm mad I didn't get promoted. So,
I feel bad for Monica. He took her to Fort Sill a lot in Oklahoma for her first play.
She loved it. She loved it.
I mean, I can't think of the Fort Lawton. It's just not a great place.
I even like it. It was like like the Army Wives TV show.
Yeah, it's a home of I get it. It's a home art.
Yeah,
I mean, it's just
and there's nothing else out there except for everybody hang out with each other.
Isn't.
By the way, one other stat I want to throw. You talked about we're talking about like alcohol and some of those things. I believe I want to bash AFIs in Class 6, but I think their cost revenue drivers are alcohol and tobacco. It's like 60-something% of their revenues and stuff. So I'm like, not to prevent people from drinking or leading the horse to water kind of thing, but like, on the mitigation steps, like, is that something we could also look at?
Yeah.
And, maybe not hyping up that alcohol as part of the machismo profile kind of thing, and balance that with mental health as well.
Yeah, we were talking off camera for just everybody about just yeah, I've never been an alcoholic, but I was definitely drinking to numb, you know what I mean? And that's the culture of the military, and drinking to numb or drinking to feel better physically or mentally, which would be numbing. But yeah, I mean, that's that whole, it's just what's expected. I mean, that's what people are doing. I mean, like, you think about what the guys and gals are doing in the barracks.
True.
What we're doing, there's like, stuff. I can't think of a time that, like, if I really think about it, like, we're a group of like, there's 4 of us down here right now that we weren't not drinking.
Right. Yeah. Good point.
Yeah, man. Even if the families are involved, the wives and kids were doing stuff. We were
calling a cookout.
Yeah. And that was just the way to do it. It was just, play hard, party hard, you know. And
I remember we were at Fort Sill, and it was like, long weekend or something. And it was at that Monday run, and, it was like a battalion run. And then, like, after the first mile, you could just smell, like, you get that smell of alcohol and everything else and stuff. And I believe there's one guy, he's running. I want to call him out because, it's still a family show. But he's running up, and then he just goes and throws up and just goes back in formation and keeps running, right? And it's like, how is that acceptable behavior that we should be letting that go? Like, wow, that guy's hardcore. Look at him. Yeah, kind of thing.
Yeah, that's what it was. I mean, I told a story of this before. As I was at Hood, and I was mobilized. They were going to Kosovo, and I was started like a little mob station that they were doing, and I went out. And I would think I was supposed to be there at like 4 o'clock and 5 o'clock in the morning, and I ended up going out with all my NCOs, and I 100%, showed up at like 3 o'clock in the morning. I should not have, been. Yeah. No, I mean, I wasn't. I was.
Yeah, you were still yeah.
And like, luckily I had a good NCO who like locked me in the was at a gym, the little area where they keep the equipment part, and just told me to stay there until he came and got me. And and then, but yeah, that was the kind of what you did. You kind of figured out when you do it. It's just a culture. And I don't know how you change that culture except for like, I think the whole drinking thing is changing a little bit just in society. Right. I look at my sons, and I'm like, they're not as hyper focused as drinking like we were. I don't know why that is. I definitely, I'm glad to see that. I don't know where that changed. Maybe I contributed to that, watching it, because, before going through Civil War, I was drinking probably having small drinks every night,
Right. Yeah.
So, but yeah, it's just, but the real reason why we're doing that is like, what, why were you drinking? If you were partying, what were you doing? Why were you drinking in the military? Mine was to fit in and to numb.
Yeah, I think it was both. Right. I think I was both. Right. And I was telling you that, like, I don't think it was off camera, but I was like, my high school was like college. Like, we raged. We got it in. We had a couple of classmates, like, they had their own house. It was like 16, 15, 16, 17-year-olds had like their own, like, 4 3-bedroom house. So like, that was party central there. And I think going into the military, it was that same kind of thing. It was just like, we go to Grafenwehr, we go to Hohenfels, we go to NTC, and we're out for like 30, 45 days. And like, we expected to party and kind of get it in and stuff. So, you know, it was kind of like inbred in the culture. But, you know, I think, you know, for me, it was, you know, it became more of that after, you know, I didn't deal with the impacts of Bosnia, Kosovo, Iraq, Afghanistan, another Afghanistan, 2 years of Kuwait, and, you know, saying I'm good. Right. So I think I had to go through, you know, so as I retired, I think I was in 16, 17 was the same window. I think I had like my midlife crisis, and like, it was just like 17, I was retiring. I was looking for a job, you know, and I think it was really thinking about, you know, what the future looks like, and, you know, who am I without this uniform? And I think they kind of go through that. And so, you know, I had to go through a lot of, you know, and one thing I never did, and I started doing was therapy. So I did that for like a year, really intensive and stuff. And I think I started getting those tools about, you know, how to deal with those problems versus, you know, and it also was habit. It was habit and like what you did. I mean, you'd come home for Friday into the day or whatever, you go to the class 6 first, and you go get your stuff, and you get them home and everything else. And then you'd sit down with your family and your wife, and you do that too, right? So it just became like what you did versus like, you know, who you are. So I think that was another like transition. So I, you know, and so I think it was first to fit in, and then it became, you know, to numb those accumulated experiences that I hadn't dealt with. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so you shared that you struggle a little bit with PTS and stuff like that. So when, you know, you didn't address it till later on, you said, but like, when did you, like, looking back, knowing this, when did you know it was starting to affect you? When did you, have you been able to pinpoint that at all?
Yeah. I don't know if it's been like I think it was an accumulation of stuff, right? But I do think it was probably, you know, probably like my Kuwait deployment when I was probably closer to 16 and 17. So I'd say, you know, when I really started looking back on what I did in Iraq or the other deployments and stuff, you know, then I started seeing it's really behaviors, right? In terms of not wanting to be around people, being more isolated, not wanting to share because you don't think they understand what you're going through, because you're talking about, what was the term we used like early on, like graded, right? And I was like, this guy didn't serve. What am I going to talk to him for, kind of thing? Or, you know, I'm going to talk to my wife. I'm not going to burden her with that. So I think that was the thing. It became that. And then at some point it becomes its own monster. That's the thing that you kind of stop. And I think for me, I kind of got to that point where I had a monster on my back. I was able to get that off, but I wasn't to the point where, you know, it was, you know, I was dead or anything kind of crazy. Right. But I got real close, you know?
Yeah. I look back, like I think there's a time, and I'm resubmitting my VA stuff for PTS, and I asked my wife to write a letter about like when, you know, they asked that letter to do it, and I asked her to do that. She hasn't written the letter yet, but I just asked her to do that, and I thought, you know, I was really nervous about asking her that in the first place, but and then she said something really quickly, like she said it'd be easy because I know exactly when you changed, and I was like, holy cow! So I'm interested to see when she writes that letter, and I don't want to say it out loud, if it correlates to where I think it happened, right? I mean? But it was exactly what you said. I think there's those things you said before, that we were isolating. You know, we're being moody. We were, you know, maybe drinking too much, numbing or something. Like I totally know when that happened. I feel like I know when that started happening, you know what I mean? And it was to just kind of to deal with, you know, not being able to really tell people how I was feeling, you know what I mean? And that was hard. I mean, that was a hard thing to see, because I think a lot of people, you know, I still think, I think that I know when it was, but it'd be interesting to read hers, because I think she's 100% can put her finger on it. And I'm sure that people around us can see it too. I think they see the change in us.
Yeah.
That we, you know, we're just not willing to see or able to see, because we're too focused on something else, you know?
And to that point, 'cause I should have been listening to the last point you said, and I was like, trying to get my next point out. But I think the pinpoint is I was also the fit in, but it's also, no, I don't say the numbing, but maybe there's numbing, right? Because when I was like chief of CSPO, Chief of Contracting Support Operations for a brigade-sized contracting unit that was headquartered in Kuwait, but we had contract responsibility in like all of Central Command area of response of AOR, and also down in Africa Command as well. And so I'm like one guy, and we have half of our staff in Kuwait. The other half is in Shaw Air Force Base, and I'm the executive officer. And then I became the executive officer, going back and forth. So that was really, for me at the time, I think, where I started, trying to find coping strategies, because it was just so stressful. But back to the thing is, like, I didn't have anyone I didn't have an outlet, right? And so I didn't think of an outlet. It was like, well, just do more work, or what? I'm off, go party, kind of thing. So, I think that's the other thing, is just that also be cognizant of what work, what daily life, does to you, kind of thing. And that can also accumulate, and, I guess I call it like tangential PTSD type effects, right? Where, you're just working, and then, what do you have? And with the stress piece on there. But, and I think, now we're kind of on the other side of, 50, I'd say, right? And I think other than that is, also with age, I've gotten that perspective, and that more of a willingness to share with people. I don't share a lot, but like when I know I need to say something, like I'll, at least I have a little bit more of that humility or openness to be able to do that, versus having to get to that crisis point, which you don't want to get to.
Yeah, I think everything, like it's just what you're saying is the tale of time, right? Like it's like it's hitting every veteran. It's the same thing, like what you're talking about, the stress. There's no other outlet to it, right? There's just the get out to deal with the stress is actually more work,
Yeah,
more work, or like PT, doing something, or like honestly, like doing some type like drinking. That was just like the thing. Like it was everywhere. Like I remember looking back and like, if you went TDY, like if you were the dude who left, didn't want to drink 5 or 6, 10 beers,
right?
And hang out with everybody, you were ridiculed or whatever. Everybody made fun of you. But like I look back now and I'm like, wow, I wish I had the courage to say I didn't want to do that. Or I had something else that I was able to go to. I mean, for me, a lot of it has been, I think it's where I'm at now, but it can start anywhere. It's just got to replace it with healthier things. Like, meditation's huge. That's if every time I meditate, it's better than, I feel a lot better than I did when I had a beer. Yeah. It doesn't taste as good, but it's like, what I mean? There's ways to get rid of that stress. You just have to look at it. And that's what we talked about before. It's just talking to people and finding something differently.
Sorry, real quick on that. The other thing is a coping strategy, if you will, I think is perspective, right? You start having perspective on things where, if you can get to the point and be like, this thing that's bothering me is bothering me so much, but you're like, it's not going to kill me, or I don't say it. I'm going to say it a different way. It's like riding the wave of a bad thought or a bad idea, and letting that thought come to you, but knowing that that's not something that you have to action. And also knowing that the next minute, the next 5 minutes, the next 10 minutes will be better than the minute that you're in, right? So having some of that perspective, I think, is also something we talked a little bit before about, using those positive previous experiences to help inform the future. But I think that's when you're past the acute stage and you're in the learning, trying to find those coping strategies and what are those things that kind of help you with it. And I think, like I said, for me, it's been really helpful is having that perspective and knowing that, and that's another thing I think about in terms of like how I think about life. I was talking to my coworker today, and she's like, I went, just stressed out. She's like, oh my God, what's wrong? Is everything okay? I'm like, dude, it's all good. I'm not getting shot at. Yeah. Like, I'm ticky-tacking on a computer, moving this to moving that. And yeah, it's important and all that's great. But like, we don't have to, this is what my co-author would say, we don't have the non-negotiable contract with America to win and fight America's wars, right? Like, that's some heavy shit. Like, that's like, that you can't lose on that one, right? I'm not saying we can't with the corporate thing, but like, for me, that helps me in like perspective and say, what? The thing that I'm going through isn't as bad as, what I went through back in 2003 or pick a thing. And so that's been really helpful for me.
Yeah, no, I like that. That's a good look on some things, because I think it's perspective is important. But, there's, the only thing I'd add to that is like, I've said that many times. I feel that I do that same times. Like, I'm with the paint department in Honda. We're painting cars. Like, if everything goes well today, we're going to paint 890, 900 cars. No one's going to get hurt, except for me when I bit it on some ice about 3 weeks ago. But no one's going to die, but there's some other stressors that come into that. There's a lot of uncertainty. I think, that's an easy way just to say, hey, yeah, like the major tragedy, like our worst days of most of the time, the military are not going to happen again today. I have that in my mind pretty well. It's my worst day I've seen. I hope that doesn't happen. I don't think it will.
Right.
But there's other stressors that get into it that are involved in that. I mean, it's that could just be as equally hard on your brain and how you're functioning than if you lose, like in corporate America, that's one of the things that people realize, like you got to make money. If you're not making money, you lose a job. If you're not, there's all these things to do. So there's other things that you can do. I think the perspective of just dealing with things the most healthy you can, and being able to have to talk about how you're feeling, or not, automatically go forward. You know what I mean? For me, I can tell you, my mind always goes to the worst case scenario. Oh, because to me, the worst case scenario is what I can prepare for. If I prepare for the worst case scenario, everything else is good on it. You know what I mean? So I've had to really stay present and be like, okay, I can't control what's going to happen. I can't control what happens to,
Wait, do you, for that piece, do you expect it? Or for the prepare for the worst, or is that you're preparing for it, or you expect it to happen?
I mean, I think there's a part of me that always was going to, if it went, I was hoping it wouldn't happen, but when it did happen, for me, it was when bad things happen, I could go back to me and my core of who I thought I was as a person and be like, this happened because of X, Y, and Z, and I deserve this. Bad things happen to bad people. Right. If you start thinking of things happen to people that don't, that's the whole thing that's going on internally for me. But that's the thinking of looking forward. Yeah, I was trying to prepare for the worst, right? So it didn't happen. But what we learned quickly is you can't control that. What's going to happen is going to happen. Right. Yeah. I can do everything I can possibly can. And it's not up to me. It's up to my higher power what's going to ultimately happen. Right. So most of the time, I was thinking the negative thing, which is all I was thinking about. And as you're approaching that, most of the time the negative thing doesn't even happen. Right. That's the key to all this stuff. All these things in your mind that it in your mind is telling you that the bad things are going to happen.
And that's why I go back to the thing. It's like, okay, if that moment, if you go, wait, but the last 4 or 5 times it went out successful, right? Or last time I was in an uncertain, stressful situation, I was able to work through it. Right. And so it's like, how can you have that more instant recall to help maybe assuage or minimize kind of like that doomsday worst case scenario kind of. I don't like flip it on you like Dr. Phil here about just
no. I mean, it's an interesting thing when you start looking at if you take it even deeper to just that. If you have to look at when it goes back to what you were talking about as a young child when you found out you were adopted, feeling hopeless. I mean, alone, not part of yes, you had a good family, but there's still in your mind something in your mind. There's a part of you that still is like, okay, this isn't my family. Somebody gave me up. There must be something wrong with me. Like you're older now. You can say, yeah, you're 50 some years old. Like you can say, hey, I can look about, I can understand why my mom did that. Right. I can but when you're 9 or 10 years old or 11 years old, you can't, your mind doesn't think that way. So that's those things that go on. So for me, it was like the negative thing was always like, I always thought bad things were going to happen to me because I felt like I was a bad person. That's a unique thing to me. Like, so I like what was happening to me was coming back because of what it was, and that's bullshit. That's just it trying to make you feel that way, right? And yeah, you're right. But how the mind works is 4 times for my mind, 4 times it went right. I'm still focused on the 1 time it didn't.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And why? And like the whole thing is like, why did this happen to me? Why did that happen to? Why does this happen to what? Like you got to get out of the. I had to get out of the whys. Right. I can't control why. My mom got colon cancer and died.
Right.
I there's no why in that. There's no why. Like I can't, there's all these things that's why I try to stay present, not to, if I get to the future, I can't control that.
Yeah.
I can prepare for it the best way I can. I'm not saying I'm just, walking around like willy nilly and not dealing with it, but I'm just not focusing on something that's not happened yet. I'm more focused in like right now to be in a healthy spot. So when something happens, good or bad, I can be present and I can deal with it.
Yeah. No, I hear
not make it into like all about like, because that's exactly, I feel like that's,
that's the airplane analogy.
With complex PTSD, that's what it is. It's like you're and then you get to a point too, like there's some things that to talk even deeper about it, it's like there's a part of me that tries to recreate that feeling of being bad. Right.
Yeah.
So I'm a bad person. I
Mm-hmm.
feel like I'm a bad person. Bad things should happen to me. So I'm going to continue to recreate what I'm comfortable with.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I'm comfortable with, there's a lot for a long time. Like, I mean, as much as I still wanted to take my life, I was comfortable with it. I was comfortable how that shame and all that felt to me, that sadness. It was something that was comfortable with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Tapping into another feeling was scary.
Yeah, you're absolutely. I think the same parallels with alcohol, right? A lot of people start out, to recreate that perfect feeling, that perfect drink kind of thing, and then at another point, it becomes, kind of like you are punishing yourself, right? It's like, I deserve this, and so I need to keep putting that on. And you get in that vicious downward spiral, and it's hard to get yourself out of that.
Yeah, I mean, and that's my own journey, and I'm not saying that's what it is for everybody else, but I just have it. A lot of those things that we do and how we think is based on, things that happen to us as a child and things that happen to us as adults. Moral injury. It doesn't matter within the military or not, and just not being able to deal with it. You know what I mean? And having like negative, the things I also for the longest time felt I was my own God. I can control everything. Right. I'm the master of my domain. I can do this. I don't need anybody, blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? And that ultimately leads to failure as well. I mean, a resentment, or because you can't do that. I can't control everything.
Yeah.
I can't even, I can only control myself. I can't control what you're going to do.
Yeah, that's a common thing amongst me. I have a family member that, he tends to, those people that they know what's good for you, or they have a great idea, like you should go door A versus door B kind of thing, and door A is probably the thing that you should do, right? And it's from a sense of wanting to help somebody, but it's also that sense of control of the people in terms of, I think I know what's best for you, right? There's also that old school kind of Archie Bunker kind of dad piece, right? But
you're tapping into a trait 6 of the Laundry List workbook of and it's just not, you're not gonna know what that is, but it's exactly that. Like that was me. And all the times that I was literally wanting to kill myself, and I was not addressing myself. I was really good at fixing others,
right?
Offering advice. I could give you all the advice, and meanwhile, you were probably doing the same fucking thing I was doing, and I was giving you advice that I wasn't even taking myself.
Yeah.
Right. That's that whole thing. It's happening all the time with the people don't realize it. Like, that's why I don't give advice anymore. I don't I used to, it's the funniest thing. That dude right there, my dad, you can see him. I cannot tell you how many times he's not given me advice. If I said, hey, what do you think I should do? And I used to be so fucking hung up about that. I'd be like, oh my God, this dude doesn't care. He doesn't help me, like da. And there's something powerful in that, because I, on the other hand, would give everybody advice. If I saw you on the side of the street and I didn't even know you, I was trying to tell you what you should do.
Right.
Because I was trying to fix you, because I did not want to fix myself. I'm not saying that's your family member, but it might be something that's going on. You know what I mean? So now I don't try to help anybody unless they're willing to help themselves, or if they are, if they ask for my, ask for my look on it. And again, how I have it, I don't try to tell people what I think they should do anymore, because I spent my whole life doing that, because it made me feel powerful. It made me feel like I had control over you, and also allowed me not to address any of my own problems that I was dealing with.
Yeah, I think for me, I'm more probably like your father, more in terms of the, not teach you how to fish, but like, have that person figure that problem out themselves, so they're empowered to solve it easier the second time it comes up for them, right? But providing at least like those, I call them bumper guards, right? Some bumper guards to make sure. And so, there's just different approaches to that. But you're absolutely right. I think it's the other thing to that is not always, but looking for advice or approval from others. That's also, I think, another indicator, right? Where you may not have, we may not have that personal self-confidence to be able to say that, right? And so it's almost like if something goes bad, then you can blame someone else because that person gave you the advice, right? Versus, I own it and this is my issue and my mistake, right? But, that also goes back to people wanting and desiring help. That, you can help them up to a certain point, but they also have to be receptive to that help in what you have. I mean, we keep mixing things in with the stuff on here. But.
No, I love these conversations. So it's yeah. I mean, the other part of my dad is, I think that I'll end the other part of that is that, yeah, it allows you not to have any accountability, because therefore in your life, someone has said to you this, you're worried that you are going to give someone the wrong advice,
right?
And it's not going to go there where they're going to blame you.
Yeah.
So it is a way of not,
Mm-hmm.
But that's the problem is
mm-hmm.
that's just the problem of the conversation, the way the world is that's what it is. Just because you give me advice and doing that and that happens, it's not because of what you told me to do. But that's what everybody's worried about. Like, there's a lot of people that's like being in the middle where you're not doing that. I mean, I just have it now that, like, I don't offer unsolicited advice.
Yeah.
If someone does ask me their advice, like, I try to approach it to like how I have it. And I for the first time in my life in the past 2.5 years, I know that how I have it is not always right.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to me 3 years ago, I thought I knew everything and I had it all figured out. So yeah, just unsolicited advice and just being open to, like how I have it and being open to change. But it's like you said before, if I ask somebody, like the safe men that I have in my life, if I ask them what they think, I ultimately have the choice whether I'm going to take that decision or not.
Right. Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Right. And if you did give me the solicited advice and I did that and something went bad, it's still on me because I chose that.
Right. Right.
So it's more of a reflecting on myself now. Like everything is about ourselves.
But that's that's in two different ways and stuff, right? We talk about, self-leadership and, the self-discipline and those things before you can lead others. And it's also partially, I was talking the airplane analogy, right? When the oxygen mask go down, you got to take care of yourself, right? So then, so there's a self-leadership and self-care and some of that thing, but then there's also the selfishness, right? Of being only thinking about yourself. But, there's also times throughout your life where maybe you're in a dark place and you got to focus on you. Right.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, I don't like, but that's an interesting word to use, is like, I don't have it anymore that my, it was, recovery, coming out of my recovery from being, having suicidal ideology and all these other things that were going on to my transformation. I don't have it at all that what I'm doing for my own self-care is selfish by any means.
Right. Oh no, absolutely.
Not one
absolutely.
bit.
Right. No, I agree with you.
Now, don't get me wrong. Like, I had it differently before. Like, I had what my self-care was, coming down here and drinking, like, bourbon, watching, sports, whatever, going out with the guys, whatever. That wasn't self-improvement, right?
Mm-hmm, right.
That was that's different. But right now, I had it too. That's what I need to do to blow off steam. That's why I need, like, now that I have it, my own self-care is, there's nothing selfish about it, because as long as I have to take care of myself, because as soon as I'm okay with myself, and this is I have this, you can agree to disagree, but if I'm okay, everything else will be okay.
Right. I think for me that journey of, getting to that point was probably from that 2016 window all the way up to maybe, probably about 4 or 5 years ago, right?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe, right after COVID. And so there was like a 3-4 year window where kind of was at that point. But I think there was also, for me, it felt like there was a cost to that. Like, I went overly, put all the walls up and I was like, I got everything good to go. And, I was checking in with the wife, just kind of doing the high level stuff. And so, but back to the not being present for the family, like, I think I went overboard in that, where I was like, let me just completely go and we're dealing me and figure all that stuff out and not have kind of any bandwidth for the rest of the family and stuff. So, there's also, make sure you also take time to look up and out every now and then as you're working on yourself.
I mean, we can start transitioning about, leadership and talk about that too, but I have it too that, I'm the leader of my family.
Right.
I'm not saying that my wife's not a leader, but for me to be an effective leader, my side of the street has to be clean.
Mm-hmm.
I have to be performing the best I can. And I've just seen that now in my life, is now when I'm okay, right? When I'm promoting my own self-care and I'm taking care of myself, mentally and physically, that everything else I'm able to be more present.
Right.
I'm not, and everybody else is at peace. I mean, I can lead when I'm not worried about, just being grounded. Like it's hard to explain. Like, I mean, I think my family can tell when I don't meditate.
Right.
Like I can tell, like right now, like I'm practicing Ramadan. So like you saw me the last hour, I'm kind of like, you know what I mean? I think people can see that, but like,
I walked in, I thought it looked like a chicken. You thought it looked like a chicken wing.
I was like, I need to eat now. But no, I mean, what I mean is like, it's just, I think that's an important thing. Cause a lot of it is like, and don't be wrong. Cause what ends up happening is like a lot of the stuff we were doing was selfish.
Mm-hmm.
The stuff we were doing was selfish.
Right. It's selfish for
Right.
good now.
Yeah. And now it's like, I have it like when I look at like all the things, because I have it too, that like you brought up earlier about isolation, right? Like I come home from work, I'd isolate. Like I'd be doing like I was coming down here, watching sports, doing whatever, like, watching TV, just doing nothing mentally to help myself. I'm isolating. Right. And I was doing that alone because I don't want to watch what you guys are watching. I want to watch this, I want to watch this. I want to do that. But what I've noticed now is I don't isolate anymore. I'm in solitude.
Mm-hmm. Right. That's a go.
So I like now when I go to like,
so my wife,
I'm super excited. I can't wait to show Josh, but I just moved into the office upstairs, and we have an office in the house that the kids have had for 11 years. Right. So now that's a place where I can have, like, when I go in there, that's a place of solitude. That's a place where the things I'm doing in there are benefiting me. I'm working on my spirituality, my growth. I mean, so there's something powerful in that, you know what I mean? And I think when families, other people, not just your family and other people see it, like when you're working on yourself and you're really bettering yourself, it rubs off on other people. People are curious about it. They're like, what are you doing? Like, like my wife doesn't complain at all about me, working with men, like the meetings I'm on, like the podcasting, like, because it's something that has a purpose. It's tied to my purpose. And I'm doing something that's really, it's taking care of me. You know what I mean?
Right now, my purpose, I think part of it is helping people understand like the difference between like leadership and management. And, I think for me, it really resonated. So, I was with the origin of the book and stuff. It was like, Bill Spraybear is my battalion commander back in 2003. And I was a battery commander. And then we fast forward 20 years in 2023, and we have our, old man Army reunion in I think it was Oklahoma City. We drove down to Fort Sill, and we brought the spouses and everybody else. And we were talking about, leadership isn't the same leadership, the stuff we've been talking about, around the edges a little bit, isn't what we see in the corporate world. And so what can we do to equip people to become a better version of themselves from a leadership standpoint, and for people to understand that leadership is ultimately about people. Like, you can distill that whole thing down into, if you care about your people and you're passionate about them, they will walk through fucking brick walls for you, right? But they will also know that you got to be an authentic leader that deserves that respect. And so that was a journey we went along there. And you talked about family leadership, and that's one of the chapters in there, right? So we break it down into, we say, listen, be a better leader is about leadership, management, and administration. And they all work together, but leadership is the top of that pyramid. And the leader, and these are things that we've learned throughout our military career, is responsible for everything that happens or fails to happen in that organization. And responsibility and authority are two different and separate things. So we spend the first third of the book really like defining what those terms are. But instead of using like typical leadership books where, retired general so-and-so, came up from the streets or wherever, and they did this job and that job, and now they're a 4-star. I can't replicate that person's path to become that leader that they were. I also can't necessarily take, bullets of, here are the main takeaways of what leaders are, go apply them, good luck. What we do is we call it a situational guide. So those elements of leadership are now incorporated in how you lead as family, how you lead in volunteer organizations, how you lead at work, how you lead in the military. And so we're giving you those tools to say, these things in your rucksack can be interchangeable and used in different leadership situations. And on top of that, from a growth standpoint, it all starts with we have 4 phases of leadership. The first one is self-leadership. And then we go to tactical, operational, and strategic leadership. But the main thing is you can't get out of the starting gates if you can't lead yourself. And, how do you do that, right? Be on time, be present, show respect. It's almost like we're giving those golden rule kind of things that we learned early on, and make sure that you apply them in your adult life. But it's easier said than done. So how do you do it? You got to be consistent in how you apply those things. None of this is easy, right? But it's just making people understand that leadership is about people, and everything else follows from that, is what the thing that we're trying to stress for the leader. So for me, that's my passion now. Cause Bill, he's retired and everything else, but this forced me to really think about did I lead with purpose when I was actually leading, or did I think I was leading? Was I really, you know what I mean? So
yeah, I think when you look back, I think all of us can look back at for me, I like that, I'm looking forward. I'm glad you guys gave us a copy of the book. I'm looking forward to reading it. I like that the self-leadership is the most important thing, because that's the part that it's like I just talked about before, when it comes time to how you're, especially when you're leading your family or these other kind of things. If you don't have your side of the street clean, right, it's not authentic.
Yeah.
And we've all seen that. We've seen every leader that, and they've been in the military that, they're not, they're saying one thing and doing the other, you know what I mean? And there was a part of my life that I was doing that as well. You know what I mean? Right. So I wonder why, and I don't wonder why. I know why that there was a resistance for my kids. Right. I love saying the thing, I would lose my fucking mind if one of my boys said, I don't want to do that. I don't want to take the recycles out. I would flip out. What do you mean you don't want to, blah, blah, blah. And then 10 minutes later, my wife would ask me something and I'd say, well, I don't want to do that either. I don't want to do that.
Right.
So
yeah.
it was just it was, yeah. And then you wonder, and you look back, and I've done a lot of self-reflection, and I look back and I'm be like, wow, man, how bad does that look? I don't say how bad it's looked. I wonder why, that's not acceptable. I'm not, I'm holding you to a different standard. And I'm saying the same thing. I'm a 50-year-old who's acting worse than a 13-year-old. I don't want to drive you to the store. I don't want to drive and get the takeout food. That's what I want you to do, what you don't want to do. And I don't want to do it. I don't want to do. Yeah. And so it just ties into the basic, if you don't have your side of the street, nothing, you're not authentic. I mean, you're going to if you have authority over people, of course, as my dad, as a dad, I have authority over them. Right. I don't have that as much now, right? They're out of the house, right? So yeah, I had that, but if I'm not being my true self, or I'm not being authentic in how I am, then they're going to see right through it.
Yeah.
And in the military, you got away with it because you had a rank on your collar. Sometimes that outranked them.
Yeah, that's true. Right.
And I'm not saying I did that all the time. That's not what as I was a leader then, but I just kind of found that I felt that way through my military career. But then at a certain point, it started dropping off in my in my personal life. I wasn't doing that either. And I think whether you're leading a corporate, I have it that if you're leading a corporate or a military, you got to have the leadership and through all aspects of your life, if you're being authentic.
Right. And I think that it's harder. It's hard to do. It's hard to get there, but I think, as humans, you get yourself a goal, and you got to do that, with that moral inventory and do that personal inventory, and really be and also lean on, those people around you. That goes back to the humility and openness, and be willing to get feedback, if you will, and be like, hey, what are those things I could, and that's hard. I know at work, they talk about, you got to get feedback from people and stuff, but it's always do I really want to hear what the feedback is and all that? But, the people that are truly open to it, it's you'll get the feedback, positive or negative, and you're okay with it. Cause it's what is it? Feedback is a gift, and whatever that cliche is. But in a lot of senses, at least you kind of know where you stand in relation to other people from that sense. Right. So that's something I'm also kind of working on, but there's certainly no leader is perfect. And that's one of the things we always lead with, is that we're all human. And so it's really kind of striving to become a better leader. So wherever you are now, and you have 10, 15 improvement areas, then that's where you start, versus the guy or gal who's maybe only got a few, and they need to just sharpen things up. And, it's also, that's one of the things I think pride myself on, even though we talked about the hyper competitiveness nature of West Point. I always felt like I was running my own race, right? Like I could see that person like going up and doing these other things, and I could have a little bit of jealousy or schadenfreude, the kind of thing. But I was always like, end of the day, I'm still on my own path. And so I feel great and happy for that person, but like, that's not going to impact me. So that I was also kind of had a little bit of that distance where I had that perspective. I think that's also helped me as well. So
I do like that. I like that point of it. So one of the things you talked about when you sent over your bio was in producing leadership rather than consuming it. What do you want to elaborate more on that? Like what do you mean by producing leadership,
right,
versus consuming leadership?
As I think as you go along your own self-leadership journey, and as I also didn't lay out kind of clearly, like leadership is people, as I said before. Management is resources and how you align people to do things. And a lot of times managers feel they're leading and they're really not. And administration is like the function, right? You got like an HR policy on taking leave or what have you, right? There's administrators that are like, managing the policy and doing that. And to kind of transition from there, I think it's that self-leadership where, to transcend from there, one, you have to have that like that deep core understanding of yourself. And that takes a while to develop and understand and grow. But, to get from, managing to leading, you have to have more than just the people piece. It's also having a vision, having that North Star, because we talked about it early on, right? We had that North Star of, defending the country and all that. It's like, what's the new North Star that you could motivate people, to perceive, to achieve beyond their perceived capabilities? And that's kind of like that secret sauce. Is like, you got to give people a vision, a purpose, a reason, show them they're valued, how they're connected to that North Star, right? And so a lot of those pieces kind of go to there. So, a lot of, and for people to get there, it's like, it's almost like practicing, right? You're not going to be able to like go try out for the basketball team when you haven't spent the last couple of summers working out and shooting up and working and doing those things in the gym and playing ball. It's like, you've got to train up. And so use those innocent opportunities where you're with your family or you're with a smaller group and work on developing those things, and also get feedback from your network about how you can get better, faster, stronger. I know it's a long-winded answer and it's really complex, right? But I think, leadership, I think how we apply it is really hard because we're still people, and how you respond is different than how he responds, and, all those different things. But, the core of that is you have to become consistently honest, be consistently consistent, and start building those positive traits that, leaders are valued for and that they want to emulate. Right. Mm-hmm. And, I can't go down the list and say, okay, there's one, like untruthfulness is one of the things I'm working on, because I think it's also about character and some of those core things. And that all goes back to self-leadership, right? It goes back to who you are, and then tying the mental health piece, right? And it's like, you got to get your head screwed on straight. However you get that done, right? You also have to be able to perform and do this. So you have to be like multifaceted. And so you have to all take care of all those pillars of yourself before you can really start thinking about how you're going to be telling what other people what to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it's interesting. The follow up on that is, I left active duty in 2005, so I'm 21 years now of being out in corporate America. Oof. One of the things that I struggled with for a long time is, and it's interesting to get your opinion on this too, or what you've seen is you've talked about the shared purpose. Like, so in the military, as much as you have a shared purpose, you have a goal. Everyone, 95% of the people in the military are on that goal, right? Mm-hmm. That's what motivates them. Like, if you're in a unit, you say, hey, we're like, whether they want to go or not. If you say you're going to NTC, everybody jumps on board and can they're going to get on that. They're going to get on that train and do everything they can to do it.
Right. One
of the things I found in corporate America is like, especially now in today's world where everybody has, a lot more opinions about things and feelings, and which is okay. But getting everybody aligned, because the leader, that's a hard thing, is finding what makes everybody tick, because there isn't, if we just say, hey, yeah, it's guys, we got to start working 60 hours a week. I'll take Josh and my son because it's time for tax season.
Right.
As much as that person's a tax, a CPA, and that's what they know they're doing, they still don't want to fucking do it because there's something that's missing on it. They don't want to work 60 hours. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And I thought that's a struggle. I still think that's hard from like, and I don't know if hard's the right word, but like that was something I had to learn very like it didn't. I had to learn it. It didn't learn it very quick. I don't know if I learned it quickly, but that was my thing. Is I would be like, oh my gosh, it's time for the fiscal year to close. We need to be making the most money we can. Some people don't care about that. Like some people don't care about being the top salesperson. They don't care about getting the top commission, right? They care about working 40 hours a week and going home.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's some people that don't care about the email that you just sent, or the email that I'm going to send after I'm done. If I look at something, they're not reading it, even though they have that. So it's interesting. Like as you write in a leadership book, when it comes to corporate America, like I feel like when I came out of the military, I thought I had the leadership thing all figured out. And I think I did for that point for that organization. But when you get into the civilian world, it changes.
Yeah. Yes.
And it's a different, it's different. That's hard to do. And we have to learn that as military leaders, because you have to start to look at people and be like, okay, how do I motivate Josh? Mm-hmm. Okay, the only way Josh is gonna be happy about working 60 hours a week is if he's on a commissioning thing where if he processes more, he gets more money. That's what makes him feel better if I'm working 60 hours. And I think that's a hard thing with leadership to, I find I've seen a lot of guys that got out, like the longer you stay in, mm-hmm. I feel like some people are that's a harder lesson to learn because you're just like, right, we're doing this. This is what it is. I mean,
yeah. Yeah.
But I've had to soften, I think is how I put that, is I've had to really like soften and just understand and look at people more individually. Mm-hmm. Right. Because there isn't that common purpose of, okay, we're going to ramp this up no matter how important we think this is to the organization. They don't have the same feeling of it where they're at in the organization, or just what they don't care. You know what I mean?
That goes to, I think, I wrote that, and you're saying the same thing, I think, is about the, how to get there is like, you gotta know your people. Mm-hmm. And you gotta, I'm gonna start with the term manager, or let's just say with leader. As a leader, you got to get to know your people. And how do you do that? You have one-on-ones, but then that's the responsibility of that leader to, as you're having those one-on-ones throughout the year. And I think a lot of times we flip it on the employee to say, you're the CEO of your own career, or you go figure it out. And we're just here just kind of waiting if you need something kind of stuff. It's like, no, man, leader, get off your ass and actually take, be more proactive in understanding what that person brings to the table and how they can fit into the organization and find that unique purpose for that person, or redirect them somewhere else. And so I think, that's a shortcoming I've observed in some places where, it's just like the manager gets there and like, they just, they're just like scratching, they're on their belly, scratching their back because and it's like, no, man, that's where the work starts. I think the other thing is about it's about the pay and some of that. I think it also kind of converts into, and it's not a bad thing, right? Because we talk about with LMA concept, you can have administrators who just love the heck out of like workers' comp or whatever kind of thing, and they become the subject matter expert. And you need them in those organizations because they have that tribal knowledge and that information stuff, right? So yeah, it's really figuring out like, the end of the day, it's really about you're still treating individual people with respect and understanding where they are and where they're going. And if they're not performing well, that's also something your responsibility to make sure that you have a fair and justified way of articulating that to them, versus end of the year going, what, no bonus, it didn't do too well this year. And it's like, hey, we met every other week or every week and we talked about stuff, and that wasn't, when do we able to do that? So I think there's an additional responsibility that managers, if they want to become leaders, need to also start doing.
Yeah. I think, the feedback is great, because I think it's just made me think of something. For the people that don't know the military, you get rated on everything. It's still, you're getting rated on everything. You're getting told pretty much what you're doing well and what you're not doing well.
Right.
And what was interesting is that was one of the things that on a professional level, I could always deal with. Like, so it was interesting. Like when somebody would say, if my manager or told me, my boss said, hey, you you're screwing this up.
Mm-hmm.
I was super open to it. I'd be like, okay, cool, that's an opportunity for me. But if it was outside of the business side of me at work, if it was at home or with like a friend telling me, like I could not hear that. Right. And it was a blind spot I had. Like the same thing at work. Like it's funny. Like I've had, we all, and no one's perfect, but I've had some situations where people they're like all upset to tell you something. I'm like, what? And they're like, well, we don't like how you handle this and blah, blah, blah. And, and I'm like, cool. Thank you for telling me that. And they're like, I thought you were gonna. I'm like, no, I can't get better unless I know that. But what's interesting is like I was doing that, but like if it was at home, like if Josh would have told me what I should be doing to be a better friend, I would be like,
right.
Yeah, I'm done with you, like whatever. But
you can never be done with Josh.
Yeah, and and I think that's what's important about the one thing I think that the military leader brings to it is that and giving the feedback back. Like when I give in feedback, it is for you to be better. I'm not looking for you to fail.
Yeah.
And a lot of that's a hard thing in the world now if you're as a leader, if you're going to give people, criticism, you got to be able to take it from the and I haven't seen that happen a lot. Like a lot of leaders will say, hey, I can point out everything you're doing, but they're completely.
I've had a couple of managers the same thing. We have with one manager, right when I transitioned, that was my first like civilian manager kind of thing. And, he bore the brunt of my transition. Right. So we was in Shar Force Base at Fort Jackson, South Carolina. And I came up here to Columbus, Ohio, and started working. And my family was down in South Carolina. So every other weekend I'd come back down there, and I was basically like a geographical bachelor and stuff. Right. But, and I didn't feel like I was connected to, my coworkers and stuff. And I was doing like the surface level stuff, meeting with Bob and Jane and what do you do? And this is great. And just getting your job up to speed. But like, I wasn't really opening up or showing them really who I was. I was like, my family was down there. So, Friday I'm down, I'm going back and forth and everything else. And so, he gave me some feedback on something and like, I lost my shit. Like it was like, and that was also the same time I was going through this also in 2017. Yeah. Right. So this is the year of all years and stuff. And, a few years later, he and I connected and, we had that discussion about things. And one of the things he admitted was, he was like, hey, I didn't understand, back to knowing your people. I didn't understand like what capabilities that you were bringing to the table. Like I just put you in front of a computer to go like, knock out contracts, but you're able to like lead and go do these other things. And you're not just interested in sitting here and stuff. And so and that's another thing I see a lot of military veterans in a corporate world is like, they're just misplaced because, it's hard for us to take this military resume of what we did, convert that into a civilian resume where someone understands those veteran superpowers and capabilities that you're going to bring to that organization and make it better than probably that civilian guy that they're going to hire. And they get disillusioned because, that weapon isn't being used in the right way in a lot of sense. And that veteran gets disillusioned. They can go down the cycle of things that we've talked about and stuff. And so, he admitted, he was like, listen, I could have done a better job of doing that. And also understanding like the difficulty of transitioning. Now to minimize that, I'll also say a lot of corporations have like veteran, resource groups and employee resource groups and stuff. And that's been a great resource for people to go to be like, I'm at least getting some of that, some of that old groove back of being in the military and having that network to understand how to navigate this new world. And so I'd encourage people to expand your network also to those veteran communities if you're in an organization.
I think let's follow up on that. So what do you consider to be military veteran superpowers that they bring to the corporate?
Well, yeah, I mean, a lot of that is in things, like being on time or, coming early, showing respect for people on your team, working with other people on your team and diverse and multicultural and all type of, organizations. So I think there's some of those things that, we talk like the 80-20 Pareto principle, like you spend, 80% of your time on 20% of the people. A lot of times the veterans will never be kind of that 20% category. In those inherent skills is like, even like an E4, has got leadership experience and's got some of those things. And then anything after that, it's like, corporate, and that's one of the things I was trying to do a little segue here, is that one of the things I was trying to do is, an organization I work for is like, we do a great job of bringing veterans into the corporation. They go find them at TAPS, they go find them when they PCS or ETS and all the other stuff, and boom, they plop them there in front of the computer doing stuff. Then after like 2 or 3 years, when we expect either a promotion or a PCS or something that we'd have in our military cycle, no one's talking to us about promotion. We're not asking about promotions. We're not understanding what can we do next, and we get disillusioned, right? So what we're trying to do is come up with like, how can we get corporations to be focused not only on veteran hiring, but also on veteran retention? What can you do to make sure that those veterans get that uplift support to make sure that, because I think those veteran superpowers outweigh the investment of having a guy, an HR guy who understands the military resume, and then having people in the hiring department who know where those spaces are, and to be able to go to that veteran retention cell and say, all right, we want to go check out our veteran community first and see if we can fit them in there, but then also have like, I guess like a support system throughout while they're there, at least somebody to kind of tap into. And so that's one of the things I'd love to see other corporations kind of embrace, is like, being about the retention, not just, not just the capturing of it, because veterans after 3-4 years, they're leaving that corporation or going somewhere else, because that first experience in the corporate world is just like,
I think that's also falls on, I have that too, is that each individual veteran's, understanding as well too. I mean, we can't, it's not always, I understand the pull, being pulled through it, but we got to sometimes be moving that too. I understand that too. I went through that as well, where you're like, okay, it comes back to me in that atmosphere is like, what we don't talk about a lot is mentorship. Like, right. Like there's a lot of like, if you're coming out of the military, dude, you need to find somebody who's a dude. If you didn't like, even if it's the E5 that you didn't really like, if you still got contact with somebody that's doing something, get them as a mentor and find out what it looks like. What do I got to do? Like find out. And even when you get into these organizations, if you're in a veteran that's getting out there, find somebody in that organization that's been there for a while. Find the person that's been there a long time, has the same thing, has the job that you're asking about, and get connected that same way. What I mean? It's not, you're right. That is a thing in the military, is it is kind of like a certain amount of time you stay, you don't screw up, you get promoted. Like, and a lot of, they still think that. Again, there's enough research that you can figure that that's not necessarily what's going to happen. But I think it's, I'm more focused now on not more focused, but I'm always like taking the accountability of my individual accountability. We have to be looking for mentors, and it doesn't have to be anybody in the military. It's great if it is somebody in the military, but it's finding somebody in the organization that you're like, this person seems happy. They know what's going on. They're connected, right? Because that's the way you grow. I mean, you find somebody that's doing it. Like I just, up at Honda, one of the guys just left yesterday, has been at the company for 31 years. Like, I mean, that guy in 11 years is, we've had problems, is, he's not even I don't even work for Honda. I work for a different company, but that guy, people like him have been where I've learned my craft right now. Right. You know what I mean? And it's sometimes it's in good times and sometimes it's in bad times. But I think a lot of it is that, there is that own internal thing that, like, if I'm just showing up and I'm doing this, I'm going to get promoted. And that's right. We know that's not going to happen. And then the other big thing is that we're not, you're not always going to get promoted. You're not always going to get the raise. That's what happens. You know what I mean? It's unfortunate. It's just one of those things. I think, I've you watch, you see a lot of organizations out there that are trying to do that and trying to mentor. I think the key thing is just, if you're getting out of the military and you think you want to do something, reach out to people. There's so many ways to be connected now, and just, you don't have to do it on your own anymore. And you guys gotta be looking out for yourself. That's the thing. I have that as like the self-leadership that you're talking about. You got to be doing the work for yourself. It feels bad though. There was a while I almost felt, like you said, you're talking about other things, it felt guilty where I'm like networking and trying to get all, it almost felt like, one is, a lot of times I think military folks feel that like networking is associated with like, kissing up and some of those things. And it's like, you can change the concept of networking into, growing your village or expanding your knowledge about things. But I was thinking, you were talking earlier, and I was like,
how many times when you PCS, has this been your experience? Is partially with me, is like when I PCS to a different location, most of my focus was understanding how to become effective as fast in that organization, but not really finding a mentor or somebody like that. So then when we get out, that's also a behavior that we're not used to doing, is finding somebody that we can lean on, and once again, opening up and sharing and doing those things.
Yeah, I mean,
right?
because I have it now that, like, I mean, the mentor thing I think is huge. I've always been looking for someone that was outside of my chain of command, whether like, and that's hard. In the military, it's even hard, even though you're still in the military together. So it is harder to like be able to really open up. But like once I started to like find somebody in my chain, like that's not in my chain of command, but in my organization, that like they have something that I want,
right?
Or there's something that they've done that I'm interested in. Like I didn't feel bad about going and finding out what that meant. Like, how did you get to that? What do I need to do? Like I remember one thing when I first, was with this job here, it wasn't like just right away. It was like 3 years into it. They made me do this whole process map of how everything works up at the plant, and I was fucking pissed.
Really?
Right? Because I was like, what do you do? This is just busy work. What are you trying to do? Like, I didn't really see, like my boss, I felt like, it was like when I was, I just got promoted. So I felt like it was a way of them, like, him not wanting me to be involved in stuff. But as I did this, like what I ended up becoming was a subject matter expert. I knew everything about what was going on.
Yeah.
Right. I had a document that had all this stuff. I've seen this process.
Like Mr. Miyagi.
But when you look at it, but what that did is like, and after it was all done, it was like, holy cow, now I become a process expert. Like I have now, when someone has a question about that, I can say, no, that's not how that does, or this is what's to do. But there's opportunities like that. He was my boss at the time, but it was a huge mentorship moment.
Oh yeah.
Right. Like that I couldn't see at the time, because I was like, what the hell? Number one, I didn't want to do it because it was a lot of work and it seemed like this is stupid. Right. But I didn't realize how quickly there was a guy sitting next to me that I feel like they'd been there, 8 years apart. I feel like I learned so much more. I got even to him in a 4-month period that I was doing that, you know what I mean? So I think like the mentorship is like huge, like I think that's in anything, like if there's something you want to do, there's so many opportunities out there. I mean, I only say that and I laugh to look at Josh, because I like one of my sons, I've been trying to push to him to do something. We can call him out, right, Nate? Like I just tell him, like, call Nate, Nate, call Josh. He doesn't want to do it. Like,
right.
And Josh Josh is in a certain point where he's in that career. He's been where you were at before. So why not, he can, and I'm okay with it. He's going to figure it out on his own. He's going to, he's a smart dude, but he could be helping himself that he doesn't know, you know what I mean? And that's the whole part of, I think, of why mentorship is important.
Okay, I'm gonna step away from that one, because that's a whole strip line. I want to close out a couple of thoughts we had earlier about that. Well, one, I think also there's other, if we from military folks in the corporate world, we also think about promotion isn't the only success, right? You can also do lateral moves, right? So I think I've moved. This is my third move. I just moved to a new role back in like October, right? So now I've got a better understanding of the organization, see it from a different place and stuff. But now I'm looking at laterals as also a good thing, right? And so I think that's something to consider. And then for the mentorship, one of my improvement areas is, I do a great job of, establishing a connection. Now you know me, I know you, but then nurturing that one over time. That's been something that's challenged me. It's like, how often am I reaching out to somebody? They're not reaching out to me, so I'm not going to reach out to them. So then relationship gets stale. So then not just from a network, not just from a mentorship, I'm just saying just general in terms of like relationships and stuff, right? So I think that's awful. Because I also look at, mentorship, but also like you also have peer relationships, and like you're right, to a lesser extent with the military, with the corporate world, we can do that and talk to Bob and Jane and have a little more some of that kind of thing, right? So yes, from a lot of different places, but it all still stems from, you wanting to lean on the people around you to help you get better or to get to where you want to get to, and not feel that it's you're using them, but it's, you're either, worthy of that opportunity down the road, or you're also offering something in return to them as well, right? So it doesn't feel like it's, just kissing ass.
So the professional relationship, I have a question on that. When you talk about trying to build a relationship, so if I'm working for you, or in the organization, I start talking to you, we have a conversation. How do you have it that whose responsibility in the mentorship is to
keep it going,
to keep that relationship going? I have it that the person that's wanting to be mentored should be the one leading it.
Yes, I agree. You're absolutely right. Yeah,
I used to have it the other way. I was always, the part of me was doing the other way. Like I was trying to draw people in like that. I have it now. Like I have never said to him, call Nate. You have Nate's number. I would never do it because it's not his responsibility. And I think that's an important thing. Right. If you're trying to get something from somebody, you got to have skin in the game, and you got to be. That's how I have it. I mean, I could be wrong, but that's like, you got to be showing me that you want to do this.
Yeah. Maybe I was thinking a little bit deeper in that, right? And that was more from a, at least in terms of like my personal,
No, I get it. Yeah. I mean, but I get the same thing with relationships. So we got to be giving, like, I got to be giving. If I want to have a relationship with you, I got to be a good friend too. I got to be calling you. I can't just expect you to call me.
Right.
It's the same thing in all my relationships. I can't expect him, other people to call me if I'm not calling them.
Yeah. Good point.
Right. And I think the mentorship is a key thing. Like if you gotta, no one's, I think the days are gone where they're looking like there's the golden boy, that he's my golden boy or golden girl almost, that someone's just grab. It still happens, but more of it, it's, you gotta be, if you have that upward look and you're looking at an organization or in life that somebody else has and you're looking for it, you're going to get it. People want to give that away.
Right.
But they only want to give it away. I only want to give it away to people that want to help themselves now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes sense.
I hear you.
So a couple more questions. I think we're hitting the 2-hour mark here. A couple more just overall questions for you. When you look back at your life of service now, right? You served 21 years
in 2 months.
2 months. Your time at West Point and all that kind of stuff and all that stuff. What are you most proud of your service?
I mean, like I said, or I alluded to it before. I think when I remember I was they handed me the guidon for Charlie Battery 2-4. That was just like, that's when it sunk in. I was like, oh, this is on me now, right? Like this is all on me. And I think all of that training for the first few years of my career, 6 or 7 years of my career before we actually deployed, I think that for me was my crowning achievement. I was proud that we were able to exercise and exercise the way that we trained for so long together and actually conduct it successfully and bring everyone home back, without loss of life, limb, or eyesight. Now, we were doing earlier, I started writing down the names. I got like 6 names of, folks that still aren't around, right? Because they redeployed, and I think one walked in front of a car, and one, killed by suicide by cop. And so, as I think about the military achievement stuff, and that, it's like on the back end, it's still kind of like bittersweet because I kind of still know how the story ends where, at any point, any of us at some kind of thing intersected with those people in lives, like what could we have done that actually asked, how are you doing? I know pivoted to that piece there and stuff, but, I'm just really proud that I was able to, provide my piece of protecting the Constitution. I think in recent times with our country that we need to reunite under kind of a common unified theme. I know it's hard to kind of get us there, but I've been a poll worker for the last 20 years and stuff, and I still think that people should think about doing more for their country than just living in it. And every time I think, and so I think that's the thing. It's not like a specific thing. It's just more like I was able to at least be part of that thing that protects the Constitution for every American, period. And so there we go.
Love it. So, you talked a little bit about transition. I mean, you're recently through the transition here in the past few years. So if there's any veteran that's out there listening, what kind of advice would you give someone that's preparing to leave the military now? And we talked a little bit about it, but kind of put a bow on it. Let's, get ready to leave, whether it's, been in the 10 years or someone that's getting out at 25, in your experience, what advice would you give somebody that's preparing to transition out?
So one, I would say is prepare early, right? Or as early as you can. Start thinking about, you even wrote the VA, we'll top that off of the back part, right? But, being prepared and start and really take advantage of those transition. I mean, I started with the basic ACAP and some of those things. and I guess the traditional person would probably go look for a job somewhere else and put their resume out and everything else. And so it's start thinking about, what are your unique skills and strengths and capabilities? So and one thing I recommend is people would take stuff like a strengths finder or one of those things. And one of our senior leaders at the company I work for, kind of broke it down. It's like, hey, you've got your list of your top 5 strengths and then your bottom, your bottom weaknesses, or top 5 weaknesses. Focus on your strengths. So if you're good at these 5 things, get better, faster, stronger at those things, and don't burn as many calories on those things you don't want to develop. Because I'm not saying don't do it, right? But I'm saying that'll position you to be like, I'm really good at, project management. I'm really good at analytical skills or whatever it is. And network. That's the other thing is I think also start building your network via LinkedIn or whatever that professional network is as early as possible. So you establish yourself as a known quantity, and be open to changing and adapting how your military style was. And like we talked about, right? Like the great example is like an email where it goes, I was a lieutenant colonel. I could send out an email like, I need this report by COB today. Done. Send. Now the corporate, right? Hey, Bob, how you doing? I hope things are great with the kids. It'd be nice if you can send a report over. Thank you very much. Right. So there's things that you have to tweak and adjust when you are kind of corporate world. So it's like, so it's a multi-pronged thing, right? Mm-hmm. But it's really being prepared, spending the time to understand what doors what things you're going to attack, and then lean on those resources to help improve, how you're going to present yourself, out in the world, and build and grow that network, and probably grab mentors as early as possible, right? If I'm thinking about the financial services sector, maybe I can start grabbing some people on LinkedIn and start having a relationship. And I think it was like 70% of jobs aren't even advertised, right? And it's through the network and through who you know and stuff, right? So you probably have a better chance of growing that and getting the job that you want or getting something versus put it out there on LinkedIn and hoping somebody, finds you.
Yeah. Good advice. Good advice.
Oh, sorry. And the VA, that's another thing is my position on VA benefits is that, we have given our best years of our life to, in service to this country. And the injuries that you incurred are legitimate and you should be compensated for it. And you should also be getting, medical attention for it as you age. And so take advantage of while you're in uniform, go to sick call, you need all those different things, right? Build the case. And, that'll also make your life easier when you're old and gray. And now you actually have, that healthcare. And so I try to tell people, don't think about it from you're trying to just get money to get some free stuff. It's like, at some point, talking to your dad, right? We were talking most time about medical stuff, right? Those things.
You're right in his wheelhouse. You're right in his wheelhouse.
Yeah, he's loving it. So yeah.
Excellent answer. Anything else you want to talk about before your final question?
Well, just you can all go to beabetterleaderbook.com.
Josh can pull it up real quick for you.
Got that on there.
Josh, I got a slide for it if you want.
Oh, cool. We have our second book. We just finished editing it, I think yesterday, the day before. It's called Trust, the Leader's Cornerstone. And so we're really going to double click onto, those elements about, what is it about leadership and how can you sustain it? And we saying it's about trust and being consistent about that as well. So, really excited.
Yeah, Josh will drop out how to get it exactly. But yeah, it's available on different platforms, Amazon, some different places. So yeah, good luck with the second book.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to reading this one.
Thank
you for giving us a copy.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
So anything else you want to chat about?
No.
Share the story.
Well, I maybe just love to hear, because you told me maybe offline, just in terms of like, where Porous of Patriots is going to be going. I know you're coming up on, episode 100, and I don't want to put any pressure, but, kind of what are you thinking?
I mean, I can't believe it's episode 100. I just recently, one of the things we're moving right now, we're getting ready to get on some other platforms, Spotify, some other stuff like that. There's a lot of footage and audio. We're close to 200 hours of
Wow.
sharing stories. So just in the past couple weeks, I've been doing that. So looking forward to getting on those different ways, so you can hear us and not see us. Although I do like seeing myself sometimes, but it's just interesting pulling those over. I've never listened to more of the podcast than I have in the past couple weeks, just because of burning it over to MP3. So it's like, holy cow, this is like a interesting thing. So yeah, I mean, we can just continue to, like I said before, continue to do our part in trying to stop, the veteran suicide epidemic. Just sharing stories. I think it's powerful. I'm always very thankful to that we have this platform to be able to meet you like I have it. I would never have met you, and it's just another connection. And just to see the connection again of how you came about and got on there, it's so refreshing to do that. And I think it's super important to continue to share. Just continue to share the stories. I haven't thought about the 100th episode yet. It's coming up.
It's got to be something special. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, we got to figure it out. We'll figure it out. We got a little bit of time. It's only, I think it's July 20 something. It'll be the 100th.
Ooh, and it's got the America 250
yeah, July.
So,
I just got to make sure it's not anywhere near my anniversary. I think that's my anniversary is in July too. So
9/9/99.
Yeah, that's the easy one to remember. Yeah. He told everybody now, if you guys want to break into his phone and his passwords and stuff, it probably has to do it around the 999 all that kind of stuff. So, but I do one final question. I think we talked about it in the very beginning, but just to put a bow on it as well. In your opinion, with what's going on with veteran class suicide, all the epidemics going on, what needs to be done that's not being done in your opinion? I know you're not a mental health professional or anything like that, but this is the one question I ask everybody: what do you think needs to be done that's not being done?
I mean, I'm trying to think, from the whole system. I guess I did systems engineering in Westmore, so I think that the whole process improvement thing. I also got Green Six Sigma, so I also do that. I love that stuff as well. I mean, it's multi-pronged from what could the average person do, which we talked about before in terms of learning how to actually check in with people and overcoming that resistance, actually not calling somebody and doing it and really checking in. I think, those tactical steps would be really helpful. Having, I think the VA does a good job. I've gone through kind of their behavioral health system and some of those things, but that's also leading the horse to water where we have to do that. So, could we have within the DOD or military some type of more robust help and support? I don't know what that looks like, but I think from what can we do, it's really continue to check in with people, but also as you do more for your country, do more for your community as well, right? And if you have just a passing passion on something, get involved and maybe help somebody out, or maybe you start volunteering and delivering meals to veterans or something, and it's just get out and do something. Whatever that thing that you think you're interested in, that's going to make a difference. And so all those little drips of positiveness turns into a big pool of something at some point. Yeah.
I mean, the little small gains,
right? Because y'all can't.
Small gains help. Yeah. I mean, this little small win is big. And that's the thing. And I do like that we talked about earlier, is that you definitely have to reach out to people. It's, but I always say it goes back to, again, I always like to add to all this is it's ultimately our responsibility to save ourselves. And we've got to be reaching out as well. Like you said, you did bring it up. I haven't been to the VA once for my PTS stuff. But it works for some people. You just got to find what works for you.
Right.
You know what I mean? Right. If that's talking to somebody, talking to a priest, talking to a friend, going to the VA, just reach out there. People care.
Yeah. I'd never done it. Right. I didn't do therapy growing up. Or I didn't do any of that stuff in the Army. All that stuff. That was my first experience going through it. Right. And, I'm not, probably should do it more often, kind of like what you said. Right. Yeah. But it was, at least a good turning point. So, but yeah.
Well, cool. I think we'll you got anything else? This is your chance.
Beat Navy. That's it.
Army beat Navy. The greatest game ever. We need to a little bit of rut though. It's that's my favorite game ever. We had them this year too.
We were at that game actually.
It's because you left that. That's why I blame my dad for that.
It was cold. We were cold. We forgot a little hand warmers and stuff because the sun was out, and then we forgot sun goes down and so we left there third quarter.
Well, that's an interesting thing. Did you hear what the Army coach is proposing though? He now wants to move it. He wants to move the date and shorten the schedule. And I was like,
Maybe you should move it. I don't know about shortening the schedule, right?
Well, they're saying we shorten the schedule because of for all of college football, because he's saying doing it a week early and bringing it up. I thought it was like cool, but I kind of like where it's at.
Yeah, it ain't gonna happen. Yeah, it's
great. The rest of college football, nobody cares about Ohio State and those guys anyway. So,
I'm also
Indiana now. Is it Indiana we're talking about?
Ohio State University.
Josh isn't that. He's forgot. We haven't heard him talk about it ever since they lost Indiana.
I mean, they bought their team this year, kind of like the Florida Marlins did back in like the 90s, whatever it was.
We'll see though.
Just saying.
We'll see. There's always next year. But no, I do want to thank you for coming in. Thanks for coming and sharing your story. Thank you for your service to the country. Thank you for what you're still doing in your nonprofits. We didn't get a chance to talk about those, but thank you for how you continue to serve the nation and other people. I really appreciate it. And it was great to get to know you.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Looking forward to it. Glad you came in. It's too bad you're not episode 100. It could have been different. That could have been better. No, but you never know. No, so right now we'll get to the part of the evening that I least like doing. But tonight we're going to honor a veteran who unfortunately took their life. Tonight we honor U.S. Marine Corps Sergeant Enrique Ricky Ramos Jr., 33. Ricky took his life on April 4th, 2025 in San Antonio, Texas. Ricky was born March 6, 1992 in Eustis, Florida. After graduating from high school, Ricky enlisted in the United States Marine Corps in 2010 as a rifleman. Ricky served in the Marine Corps for 10 years with courage, loyalty, and dedication before being medically retired in 2020. Ricky had a passion for the gym, boxing, following MMA, and Pokemon. Ricky was always photo ready, loved taking selfies, and never missed a chance to capture special moments with friends and family. Ricky truly cherished seeing family and celebrating events together, treasuring every laugh, hug, and shared memory. Ricky's heart shone brightest as an uncle, delighting the lives of his nieces and nephews, offering endless love, encouragement, and playful energy. Ricky's battle with depression and PTSD ended when he took his life at the Audie Murphy VA Hospital in San Antonio, Texas. After not receiving the treatment he felt he needed, Ricky survived by his father, Enrique, stepmother, Letitia, siblings, Richard, David, Jorge, Jeanette, Kane, Joshua, and Jared, and numerous other relatives and friends. And please, if you or someone you know is in crisis and might be considering suicide, please contact the Veterans Crisis Line at 988 or 1-800-273-8255 and press 1, or you can text 838-255, or you can chat online now at veteranscrisisline.net/chat. Some of you might, if you're listening, might sound very similar that I said the same thing 2 weeks ago about the other veteran we talked about, but Ricky actually took his life at the same VA parking lot in San Antonio a few months after the veteran we honored on episode 89. So again, it goes back to how important it is to reach out. And if you're not feeling like you're getting something, reach out, please. We'd rather not have to tell these stories. It'd be nice to not have to honor this, but unfortunately we do. So again, David, I'd like to thank you for coming on. We ended in a quote. I think I pulled a quote from the book from your former battalion commander and former fellow author, Bill Sprayberry. It says, leadership is the ability to foster an environment in which people motivate themselves to achieve beyond their own perceived capabilities and face problems for which there appear to be no simple solutions. So
that is our definition of leadership.
Yeah. So pulled it. I was trying to find a quote from you. I couldn't get it. Bill's still on them all. He's on all the videos. So come on.
Yeah.
No, but again, thanks for coming on. Thanks to everybody listening. We've got a solid schedule coming up here. We're booked all the way through July. So thank you for everybody that's coming on. Again, if you're interested, please get with me. We have things that change, and it's always good to have a roster of people that are coming on. So we're excited about it. Yeah, my father-in-law is finally going to come on there. It's going to be an interesting episode.
No medical talk though.
Yeah, my dad doesn't know he's learning that for the first time. So
involuntold.
He's having his own conversation over there. Now my dad he was episode 30. He was
okay.
Episode 30, long time ago. Yeah. He's ancient. We already heard his story. It's no big deal. I'm kidding. But thanks everybody that listened. Everybody have a great night. And again, until next time, be kind to yourself, honor the stories of our veterans, and remember, when you sit down with the Patriot, the conversation's different. We'll see everybody in a couple weeks.